Chapter 704. High up in the sky, Lin Yuanliang's body glowed with spiritual light. His blood rose and the origin energy of the heavens and earth surged. A golden armored shadow of the mad god walked out from behind him. He punched out and the shadow of the mad god trembled strangely. The surrounding void space was distorted and the frightening fist strength was directed towards the Thousand Illusion Sword Master. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master immediately took out the inherited sword of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, the Thousand Illusion Sword. In terms of grade, this sword was a level 8 earth weapon. A level 8 spiritual weapon was called an earth weapon. Unlike a level 7 treasure weapon which only had a certain level of spirituality, a level 8 earth weapon had already formed a weapon spirit. The weapon spirit was connected to the sword wielder and could be more compatible with the heavens and earth. It could greatly enhance the unity of heaven and man and divine origin stage cultivators. However, the rarity of a level 8 earth weapon was comparable to that of a divine origin stage cultivator. From a certain perspective, there were even fewer level 8 earth weapons than divine origin stage cultivators. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master's sword could split mountains and rivers. The magnificent sword shadow was about to split the sky into two and also shattered Lin Yuanliang's fist strength. However, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master's heart trembled. He did not know why, but he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. He was in the divine origin stage and had been through many battles. He naturally had a sense of danger. At this moment, a thunderous roar could be heard from the 9 heavens. Dark clouds gathered and thunder rumbled. The origin energy of the heavens and earth trembled. The heavenly thunder of divine punishment, vanquish demons and slay Buddhas. A sloppy figure bathed in the heavenly thunder of divine lightning appeared. He looked like a thunder god descending. He was the Imperial Hall of Consecration Master who had been hiding for a long time, the old man. Those from the Thousand Illusion Sword sect who did not know what was going on were shocked. There was another divine origin stage cultivator. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master and Wei Qian revealed a look of despair. Temporarily blocking Lin Yuanliang was already the Thousand Illusion Sword Master's limit. How could he block another divine origin stage cultivator? As the heavenly thunder descended, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master's white hair swayed without wind. He condensed his sword fingers and an illusion formation was formed. The illusion formation ignored the thunderbolts and enveloped the old man. The old man tilted his head and said, "Old thing, your illusion technique is not bad, but I'm also a spirit caster. This little bit of illusion technique can't do anything to me." Then he snapped his fingers lightly, and a layer of light purple lightning sprinkled down, protecting himself. At the same time, the destructive holy thunder struck. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master's magic treasure sword shook and 3 sword projections appeared in the sky. As the sword shadows trembled, they ignored the sword chi and blocked most of the divine thunder. But at this moment Lin Yuanliang also made his move. He blasted out another punch. What was different was that this punch actually carried the aura of a powerful army, and it transformed into numerous brave and ferocious knights that charged forward. Ping ping ping. Under the combination of the holy thunder and the fist, the 3 sword shadows were in imminent danger. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master's face also turned red. He had also reached his limit. On the other side, Wei Qian, who was already on the verge of death, suddenly opened his mouth and said something. But no one else heard his voice. Only the Thousand Illusion Sword Master lowered his head and looked at him. His eyes were filled with reluctance and hope. Seeing that his 3 sword shadows were about to collapse, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master seemed to have made a very difficult decision. Then he slapped his forehead and a mini person flew out from the top of his head. That was his immortal soul. The immortal soul of the Thousand Illusion Sword Master swayed slightly and actually entered Wei Qian's body. Wei Qian's body started to float mysteriously, and the blood-red sword shadow that enveloped his body also shrunk back into his body. Waves of frightening aura spread out, and even Lin Yuanliang and the old man's faces were filled with seriousness. Lung Shiqi's supercilious eyes also flashed with a strange look. Through his supercilious eyes, he could clearly see that Wei Qian's spiritual aura had completely changed. It had become the Thousand Illusion Sword Master. They actually used some kind of secret method to allow the Thousand Illusion Sword Master to obtain Wei Qian's body. In Lung Shiqi's words, it was possession. Furthermore, it was Yu Qian who wanted the Thousand Illusionary Sword Master to possess his body. His body would not feel any discomfort and the techniques that they cultivated were the same. This meant that the Thousand Illusionary Sword Master had a young body. The biggest weakness of the Thousand Illusion Sword Master was his age. In fact, in theory a Tianyuan cultivator could live for 300 to 400 years. But that was only in theory. After all, even among Tianyuan cultivators, it was difficult to avoid fighting. Once injured, it would more or less affect one's lifespan. The Thousand Illusions Swordmaster's chi and blood had long deteriorated, and his strength was probably less than half of his peak. That was why it was so difficult for him to face Lin Yuanliang and the old man together. Otherwise, with his strength, it was not impossible for him to fight one against two. Now that he had obtained a young body, his strength had almost recovered to its peak state. Of course, he also had a very big disadvantage. That was, Wei Qian's cultivation was only at the unity of heaven and man level. In terms of spiritual power, it was far from the Tianyuan cultivator. However, for a battle between Tianyuan cultivators, spiritual power was not the most important thing. Mastery of the origin energy of heaven and earth was the most important. Wei Qian, or rather, the Thousand Illusion Swordmaster, stood in the air holding the Thousand Illusion Sword in his hand. His eyes flashed with a fierce light that looked down on the world. It's been too long. I haven't felt this powerful for too long. The Thousand Illusion Swordmaster murmured, Lin Yuanliang, the old man, today, let me see what you two juniors are capable of. He held his sword across his chest and did not attack. However, everyone present felt the boundless sword essence. It was as if everything in the world had become a sword. Hiss. The old man said in surprise, this old thing has actually touched the edge of the laws of heaven and earth. If he is given a few more decades, he may really break through to that level. Lin Yuanliang's expression was also very serious. It seems that this mission is not as easy as I thought. What era is it now? You still dare to look down on juniors? Today I will show you that today's world no longer belongs to you. Lin Yuanliang's body flashed with a dazzling golden light. He flashed and flew to the forehead of the golden-armored mad god behind him. The two merged into one. The patterns on the mad god's body became clearer. Every strand of hair and pores grew out. It had completely turned into a living god. Crash. At the same time, the old man waved his hand and a purple lightning flashed across the void. The faint roar of a giant beast came from the nine heavens thunder clouds. A terrifyingly huge thunder beast poked out of the thunder clouds. It opened its mouth and a thunder-light pillar that was hundreds of feet thick gushed out. The Thousand Illusion Swordmaster's expression did not change. Let me show you the true power of the Thousand Illusion Sword Codex. Chapter 705. The Thousand Illusion Sword Elder's Thousand Illusion Dao Sword suddenly disappeared. At the same time, there were thousands of Dao Sword shadows suspended in mid-air. It looked like a sword formation. He formed a seal with his hands and a dreamy bubble wrapped around the sword shadows and connected them together. After the formation was formed, countless sword hums resounded for hundreds of miles. Anyone who heard the sword hums felt their vision turn black as countless illusions entered their minds. Only the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder were not affected too much. Some of the spirit casters on Leng Shiqi's side hurriedly set up an isolation array to prevent too many casualties. Within the sword formation, countless sword threads intertwined and shot out. Those sword silks were split into two and one of them shot into the sky. Those seemingly weak sword silks easily broke through the layers of lightning, and in the blink of an eye, they pierced through the body of the lightning beast, creating bloody holes. The other half of the sword silks shot towards Lin Yuanliang. Lin Yuanliang used the mad god's body to press down three fist seals. The first seal shattered mountains and rivers, the second seal shattered mountains and tsunamis, and the third seal shattered the heavens and earth. The entire mountain range was constantly shaking, and the spirit cultivators who were still fighting had already retreated far away. Leng Shiqi also retreated. The power of the three sky origin stage experts fighting in the sky was too terrifying. If he got any closer, he would be implicated and die without a burial ground. However, Leng Shiqi also watched their battle without blinking. After all, there were very few opportunities to see a life and death battle between sky origin stage experts. As long as he could see a little bit of the trick, he would benefit a lot. Other than that, he was also looking for an opportunity to see if he had the chance to interfere. Facing Lin Yuanliang's fist seal that shook the void, the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder's seal changed. Those sword silks instantly condensed into a huge sword. One sword to break three seals. At this time, the old man's lightning beast was strangely shrinking. The smaller it became, the denser the lightning on its body became. In the end, the huge beast that was supporting the sky condensed into a spear blade that flickered with endless lightning. The old man swung his spear downwards, and the blinding lightning was so bright that no one dared to look at it directly. In an instant, a large patch of sword silk was sliced apart, and the remaining power was directed at the Thousand Illusion Sword Master. You do have some skills. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master's expression was still very calm, as if he was guiding a junior. The sword will around him shot up into the sky, and all the sword shadows in the sword matrix flowed out like dragons soaring into the sky. This part of the sky shattered inch by inch, looking like a broken spider web. Lin Yuanliang and the old man were shocked. They did not expect the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder to be so powerful. There were very few people in the Heavenly Yuan stage who could kill him. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master swept his gaze across Leng Shiqi, following which tens of sword silks shot towards Leng Shiqi. He also knew that today's disaster was all caused by Leng Shiqi, and this boy must die. However, Leng Shiqi did something that no one expected. He did not dodge, and instead he jumped up and rushed forward. Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei immediately shouted, "Sir, what are you doing? Be careful." The old man also shouted. He did not want the new member of the elite hall to die like this. The others did not understand why Leng Shiqi did this. How could he, a person in the gang spirit realm, take on a battle between Heavenly Yuan stage masters? If he did not escape at this time, he might have a chance to survive under the protection of so many masters. Not only did he not escape, but he also rushed forward. This action was undoubtedly seeking death. The disciples of the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect sneered. Today's disaster was caused by Leng Shiqi, and they could not wait for Leng Shiqi to be smashed into pieces. Of course, Leng Shiqi would not court death. He observed the battle between the three Heavenly Yuan stage masters and could see that the Thousand Illusion Sword Master had the upper hand in the situation of 1 against 2. He was not too worried about the old man and Lin Yuanliang. The two of them had not shown their trump cards yet, but the Thousand Illusion Sword Master had. However, if they continued to fight like this, even if they won in the end, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. In particular, if the Thousand Illusion Sword Master was really forced into a desperate situation, he might go crazy and kill Leng Shiqi and the other masters in the gang spirit realm and oneness of heaven and men stage to be his scapegoat. Originally he was still looking for an opportunity to attack. Now that the Thousand Illusion Sword Master attacked first, it naturally gave him a chance. It was a chance to end this battle as quickly as possible. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master also showed a trace of surprise when he saw Leng Shiqi rushing over. However, he did not feel disdain. Instead he felt puzzled and surprised. In his opinion, the four great chiefs were not idiots who would court death. This person must have his own guard of honor. Immediately, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master frowned. This was because Leng Shiqi was not penetrated by the sword silk. Instead he passed through it directly. Unless one was a master in the Heavenly Yuan stage, no one could pass through the sword formation and sword silk so easily. How could Leng Shiqi, who was only in the gang spirit realm, do it? In reality, no one noticed that Leng Shiqi was holding a sword in his hand. To be more precise, it was a faint sword shadow. As a sword cultivator, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master immediately felt that something was wrong. He stared at the faint sword shadow and frowned. As a swordsman, he felt an indescribable power from the sword shadow. It was a power that could kill him. The four wings on Leng Shiqi's back flapped and he turned into a five-colored ray of light and rushed towards the Thousand Illusion Sword Master. In the eyes of others, he was simply courting death. However, the strange thing was that the powerful sword formation that defeated the two Heavenly Yuan stage cultivators suddenly twisted and disappeared. Lin Yuanliang and the old man were shocked. They knew how powerful the sword formation was. How could it be destroyed in an instant by a gang spirit realm cultivator? What made them even more incredulous was that Leng Shiqi was wielding a sword-shaped shadow as he stabbed towards the Thousand Illusion Sword Master. However, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master did not react at all, regardless of whether he was forming hand seals or waving his Taoist sword. From afar, the Thousand Illusion Sword Master was like an actor on a stage. It was a little comical. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master was also stunned. At this moment he could not even mobilize his own spiritual energy, let alone the chi of heaven and earth. Soon after, his body, which was floating in the air, fell to the ground uncontrollably. Leng Shiqi's sword was already in front of him. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master had lived for hundreds of years. What had he not seen before? However, at this moment he started to panic. In his panic he could only use the Thousand Illusion Sword to block in front of him. He wanted to use the power of the level 8 earth weapon to stop Leng Shiqi. However, with a clang, the Thousand Illusion Dao sword in his hand was instantly knocked away, and the sword-shaped phantom pierced through his heart. The Thousand Illusion Sword Master looked at the hole in his chest in a daze. He could not believe that he would die so mysteriously. He could not believe that he would die in the hands of a gang spirit realm cultivator. Of course he was more desperate. Once he died, the Thousand Illusion Sword sect would be destroyed. The Thousand Illusion Swordmaster's body fell from 1,000 feet high. Without the support of any spiritual energy, his body was smashed into meat paste. The Thousand Illusion Swordmaster, who had protected the Thousand Illusion Sword sect for hundreds of years, had fallen. On the battlefield, which was filled with tens of thousands of people, not a single sound could be heard. Everyone was staring at Leng Shiqi, including Lin Yuanliang, the old man, and the Heavenly Yuan stage practitioner. Leng Shiqi stood in the air. He used the passive skill Hell's Curse to absorb the remnant soul of the Thousand Illusion Swordmaster. The soul power of a Tianyuan stage cultivator instantly restored his spiritual energy and broke through the barrier to level 8 of the gang spirit realm. At the same time, the souls of the Thousand Illusion Swordmaster and Wei Qian were also kept in the Mansion of the Dead. Leng Shiqi was also looking forward to seeing what was special about the souls of Tianyuan stage cultivators. The reason why he dared to mess things up and killed the Thousand Illusion Swordmaster so easily was because of one thing. Divine Sword, Bright. Chapter 706. The Divine Sword Clear Light could cut off all the spiritual energy in the world. In front of this sword, anyone was no different from an ordinary person. This included the Sky Origin stage experts. It was a pity that the Divine Sword Clear Radiant that Leng Shiqi had obtained was a one-time consumable item. Otherwise he would have felt invincible. However, after using the Divine Sword Clear Radiant once, he had an indescribable strange feeling in his heart. He wanted to immediately go into seclusion to comprehend it, so he immediately shouted, "Leave no one alive." Only then did everyone finally react. They suppressed the shock in their hearts and charged towards the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. The remaining disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had no fighting spirit and were in a mess. Under the encirclement of many experts, they suffered heavy casualties. This was not to say that the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect were too useless. It was just that after Wei Qian and the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder, their two strongest backers fell, they could no longer see any hope. Not to mention the many experts of the Dark Thunder Guards, there were two Sky Origin stage experts, Lin Yuanliang and the Old Man in the Sky. There was also Leng Shiqi, who could be said to be abnormal. All the disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect had lost any fighting spirit. The old man's eyes moved and a shocking thunder fell from the 9 heavens. In the blink of an eye, the few remaining experts of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect who were at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage were killed. Then he and Lin Yuanliang did not make any more moves. With their identity and status, killing someone at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage was already lowering their status. If they were asked to go down and kill those disciples at the Spirit Astral Realm and Spirit Aperture Realm, it would be embarrassing. However, there was indeed no need for them to make a move. Even Leng Shiqi did not make a move, because the situation had been decided. He spread out his colorful wings and hovered in the sky above the battlefield. It seemed like he was preventing any fish from escaping, but in fact he was constantly absorbing a large amount of soul power. There were tens of thousands of disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Among them, there were many spirit cultivators at the 4 realms of heaven and man. Just the remnant soul power alone increased Leng Shiqi's spiritual power and physical strength by a large amount. At the same time, a large number of souls were absorbed into the underworld. In just an hour, the Thousand Illusory Sword sect, one of the top sects in the Ba Huang army, had been reduced to a pile of crimson ruins. Holding a bracelet and a ring, Yan Ming walked to Leng Shiqi. "Sir, this is the storage space of the Thousand Illusion Sword Sect's Sect Master Wei Qian and Grand Elder Thousand Illusion Sword Venerable. Is this a storage ring?" Leng Shiqi picked up the light-colored ring. This storage ring was the rarest and most precious of all the storage rings. The space inside a storage ring was very large, enough to match 10 storage bracelets. Moreover, it was more flexible and it was usually engraved with formations. It was a priceless treasure. Anyway, this was the first storage ring that Leng Shiqi had seen. He took the bracelet and ring without hesitation. Then he shouted, "All the resources of the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect will be divided equally." As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd burst into cheers. These people were all from the Dark Thunder Guards, the Discipline Commission and the military. However, these 3 places were extremely strict. It was not easy to profit from them. The Thousand Illusionary Sword sect was a top sect that had stood tall for hundreds of years. The resources it had accumulated were definitely huge. Even if everyone divided them equally, they would still be able to get a lot of good things. Generally speaking, most of the resources seized after destroying a force would fall into the hands of the top few people. The rest would be divided among the subordinates and there would not be much left. Therefore, Leng Shiqi's generosity made everyone have a good impression of him. In addition, in the process of attacking the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he first used a trick to gather all the disciples and secretly destroyed the Thousand Illusions' 9-pavilion sword formation. In the end, he seriously injured the sect master Wei Qian and killed the Thousand Illusion Sword Venerable by himself. Regardless of whether it was his strength or his bearing, they were all admirable. Unknowingly, Leng Shiqi's prestige among these people had reached a peak. Wu Yi was even more envious in his heart. In fact, to Leng Shiqi what he lacked the most was not those resources. He only needed to obtain the things of Wei Qian and the Thousand Illusionary Sword Venerable. In particular, the complete Thousand Illusionary Sword Codex inside made him extremely envious. Seeing that Yan Ming had offered up the treasure, Deng Xinlei walked over with a long sword in his hand. One could see that the sword was still trembling violently in his hand. If it were not for Deng Xinlei forcefully suppressing it, the spiritual sword would have probably broken free. A sword that could be suppressed by an expert of the unity of heaven and man stage with all his strength was the most precious treasure of the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect, the rank 8 earth weapon, the Thousand Illusion Sword. Sir, a treasured sword is a gift to a hero. I believe that you are the true owner of this sword. Deng Xinlei had been completely subdued by Leng Shiqi. From his methods to his strength, he was far inferior to him, so he naturally began to fawn over him. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows, and his eyes could not help but reveal a few wisps of light. He already had a lot of high-grade spiritual weapons on him, especially in Li Jueqing's storage bracelet where he found several rank 7 precious weapons, but he had never owned a rank 8 earth weapon. Not to mention the Gang Spirit Realm and the Unity of Heaven and Man stage, even the Tianyuan stage experts did not have a rank 8 earth weapon. Leng Shiqi reached out to hold the Thousand Illusionary Sword, and the sword immediately buzzed, causing his hand to go numb. Humph! Leng Shiqi snorted softly, and his palm instantly turned into the color of diamond. Majestic mental strength surged, and at the same time, he operated the Thousand Illusionary Sword Codex in his body, finally making the Thousand Illusionary Sword Codex settle down. With this Thousand Illusionary Sword, it was equivalent to letting his strength soar out of thin air. Now, even if it was an expert at the middle stage of the Unity of Heaven and Man stage, he was confident that he could kill him within a few moves. As for the late stage of the Unity of Heaven and Man stage, he might be able to hold on for a while. This was not because Leng Shiqi was arrogant, but because he had accidentally comprehended the 4 spirits formation after mastering the 16 Heaven Changes True solution, and had a rank 8 earth weapon in his hand. Ordinary experts at the middle stage of the Unity of Heaven and Man stage were no match for him. At this time Lin Yuanliang and the old man, 2 experts of the Tianyuan stage, came over with strange expressions. They stood on both sides of Leng Shiqi and did not speak. They just stared at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi was numbed by their stares. He put away the Thousand Illusionary Sword, cupped his fists and said, "Seniors, what are you doing?" Lin Yuanliang and the old man looked at each other and shouted to the East Town Thunderflame Army, "Listen up, gather the resources and return to Donglin County in formation." "Yes, sir." Then he said to Leng Shiqi, "There are some things that are inconvenient to say. Anyway, the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect has been destroyed. Let them deal with the follow-up matters themselves. Come with us." Leng Shiqi more or less guessed their intention. It was nothing more than the way he killed the Thousand Illusionary Sword Master was too strange. Fortunately, he had already thought of an excuse to deal with it. So the 3 of them immediately left and soon came to the dense forest dozens of miles away. Chapter 707. After Leng Shiqi, Lin Yuanliang and the old man landed on the ground, the old man waved his hand and set up a thunder formation. Then he asked seriously, "How did you kill the Thousand Illusion Sword Master?" Lin Yuanliang's eyes were also shining. When Leng Shiqi used the 4 spirits formation, he had activated the power of the laws of heaven and earth. This was enough to shock them. But when Leng Shiqi killed the Thousand Illusion Sword Master, even they, who were in the Tianyuan stage, could not figure out what had happened. Leng Shiqi was very clear that the biggest reason was the Divine Sword Jiaoming. The Divine Sword Jiaoming definitely contained the power of the laws of heaven and earth. But what was special was that it did not belong to this world. In Leng Shiqi's original understanding, he could only understand the power of the laws of this world in this world. But the Divine Sword Jiaoming also broke his idea. At the same time, it also pointed out a wider cultivation path for him. Because he had the system, he had many opportunities to come into contact with the power of the laws of other worlds. Facing the old man's question, Leng Shiqi answered, "Actually, I don't know. I got a sword by chance. To be more precise, it was a sword shadow." Sword shadow? The old man did not understand. Yes, it was a sword without a physical body. In front of this sword, everyone is just an ordinary person. That's why I was able to kill the 1,000 illusion sword master. Leng Shiqi said with a mixture of truth and falsehood. The old man and Lin Yuanliang were silent. They saw the 1,000 illusion sword master being killed by Leng Shiqi with their own eyes. Even a Tianyuan stage cultivator could be turned into an ordinary person. What kind of power was this? Even the power of the laws of heaven and earth might not be able to do this. Now Leng Shiqi was like a fog in their eyes. They could not see through him. Not to mention the sword shadow, just the fact that he could activate the power of the laws of heaven and earth in the gang spirit realm made them feel inferior. The power of the laws of heaven and earth was what all Tianyuan stage cultivators yearned for. Unfortunately, the energy of the laws was illusory and intangible. It couldn't be seen or touched, and it couldn't be taught by word of mouth. One could only rely on oneself to comprehend it. Therefore, most of the sky origin stage cultivators had never even touched the surface of the natural laws. All they could do was try their best to control as much natural powers as possible. The origin energy of heaven and earth was indeed powerful, but in this world, one could only be considered as a relatively powerful contestant. Only those who had grasped the power of the laws of heaven and earth could be called the rule maker. This was just like Leng Shiqi's Dark Thunder Guard. Only the 4 great managers were the real higher-ups and could change the rules of the Dark Thunder Guard. Below them, even the deputy general manager was only a person carrying out a mission. Leng Shiqi's cultivation was still in the gang spirit realm, not even in the oneness of heaven and men realm, but he had crossed 2 big realms and got in touch with the law of heaven and earth, which made the old man and Lin Yuanliang feel that their years of cultivation were in vain. However, they didn't have any bad intentions. First of all, Leng Shiqi was one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards. Moreover, the power of the laws was yours once you comprehended it. No one could take it away from you even if they wanted to. The old man said in an envious tone, "Your luck and perception can be said to be heaven-defying. In some aspects you have already surpassed us." Lin Yuanliang also said, "Your cultivation is actually not so important. The oneness of heaven and men realm requires you to communicate with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but you have already left this level. As long as your spiritual energy reaches a certain level, it will be easy for you to break through the oneness of heaven and men realm. Even the sky origin stage won't be much of an obstacle for you." In fact, Leng Shiqi himself didn't know that his cultivation had been so smooth. He said politely, "I'm just lucky." "Maybe you are lucky, but in my opinion you seem to have a lot of luck." The old man shook his head a few times as if what he said was reasonable. Lin Yuanliang, on the other hand, nodded seriously. Luck. Leng Shiqi began to ponder. He had seen a lot of luck. In the beginning, he and Nine Leaf worked together to get the Wind Thunder God's luck stone from the Wind Thunder Tower in the West Barren State. It was said that there was a sliver of luck in it, but he didn't know if he absorbed it. Later, he entered the Dragon Fountain to cultivate for 10 days. There was definitely luck in there. Also, when he was in the Tuoba country, he absorbed some golden power from Tuoba forefather. Perhaps it had something to do with luck. Leng Shiqi also went to learn about luck. Luck was actually a bit similar to luck. As long as you had luck, you would encounter good things wherever you went. The difference was that when you had a lot of luck, you would soar into the sky. Whether it was conquering the world or pursuing the heavenly path, it would be smooth sailing. Leng Shiqi thought about what had happened to him recently and felt that the old man was right. Especially in the Void Scar Sky, his inky jade sword was the key to the Yunlu Demon Palace. He also got the Heavenly Thunderfire bead there. From then on, he set up a plan to rob the Heavenly Thunderfire bead, which attracted Lei Qingjuan's attention. In the end, he was conferred the title of one of the 4 general managers. Not only that, he also killed all the people who wanted to kill him in the Yunlu Demon Palace. Although Leng Shiqi's strategy and strength were the key to all this, he couldn't do anything about it. Therefore he also felt that he might have some luck. As for the Heavenly Thunderfire bead that he copied, it did have a lot of formations. He couldn't see through it at all, so he could only keep it as a collection. Lin Yuanliang suddenly took out a small translucent bottle and threw it over. "This is the 1,000-year-old black snake saliva. Each drop contains a lot of pure spiritual power, enough for you to use until the peak of Gang Spirit Realm. Leng Shiqi subconsciously wanted to refuse. As the saying went, one should not accept a reward without pains. He was not familiar with Lin Yuanliang and had no relationship with him, so he couldn't take it. Lin Yuanliang said directly, "You have endless potential. If you don't die halfway, you will be above me in the future. Just take it as a good karma." "General Lin, you are so straightforward. I will take it." Lin Yuanliang's straightforward words made Leng Shiqi feel at ease and accept the 1,000-year-old black snake saliva. He really wanted it. The old man rolled his eyes. "General Lin, you are so rich. I can only do you a favor. When we return to the imperial capital, I will take you to see the masters of the imperial hall of worship." It was not a real thing, but it was far more valuable than the 1,000-year-old black snake saliva. The masters of the imperial hall of worship were all masters of Tianyuan realm. Getting to know a few of them, even if it was just a little bit of affinity, would be a great benefit. Especially for people like Leng Shiqi who mingled in the power of the imperial capital. If he had some connection with those masters, he would be feared by many. He also knew that the reason why the two masters in front of him gave him face was that they thought highly of his potential and future. He immediately cupped his hands and said, "Seniors, if you need me in the future, just let me know." Chapter 708. After exchanging some pleasantries, the three of them parted ways. Lin Yuanliang led the Eastern Thunder Flame Army back to Donglin County, while the old man returned to the imperial capital alone. When the two of them were far away, a charming voice sounded, "You still dare to come out with two Sky Origin Realm cultivators? Aren't you afraid that they will search your soul?" The one who spoke was Nine Leaf. She walked out of the void, and there was a faint ancient aura around her. What was different from before was that her hair had turned pure black, and there was no sign of a demon on her body. Apart from a pair of demonic purple eyes, she was clearly a beauty who could bring disaster to a country. She was right. This was what Leng Shiqi was worried about at first. However, it was because of Nine Leaf that he had the confidence to come here alone with two Sky Origin Realm cultivators. Although Nine Leaf's cultivation had not fully recovered, she had also obtained the inheritance of the underworld after being conferred the title of Ghost Emperor Yao Yi of the Northern Wastelands. Now she had completely mastered the inheritance technique. Although Leng Shiqi had not seen her fight, he was sure that her strength was no less than Sky Origin Realm cultivators. She had not recovered to the 7th rank, but her strength was stronger than when she was at her peak. This was the strength of the underworld's inheritance. Thinking of the underworld, Leng Shiqi felt that it was time to upgrade it. Of course, now was not the time. He immediately thought of a plan and said, "With Senior Nine Leaf here, I naturally have nothing to worry about. Your mouth is getting sweeter and sweeter. But then again, the underworld's inheritance is indeed powerful, even more powerful than my memory inheritance. I don't know where you got this arcane realm." Nine Leaf continued, "Speaking of which, it's strange. Why is it that when I'm not by your side, you always have some strange things? For example, the sword you used to kill Thousand Illusion Sword Elder. Where did it come from? Don't talk about chance and coincidence. There are too many coincidences around you." Nine Leaf's question hit the nail on the head. This was also the reason why Leng Shiqi did not want to spend too much time with Nine Leaf. He had too many unknown things in the system that could not be explained at all. He could only stubbornly say, "It is indeed due to chance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the ability to create this arcane realm." Nine Leaf curled his lips. "It's fine if you don't want to say it. In any case, we have a blood contract. As long as you don't harm me, it's fine. Junior wouldn't dare." "Alright, you heard what that old man said just now. When I return to the Imperial City, I'll probably meet some experts from the Imperial family's Hall of Worship. Senior, if you keep hiding on me, I'm afraid it'll be inconvenient." "Oh, so you were waiting for me here." Nine Leaf instantly saw through Leng Shiqi's intentions, but she still said, "Anyway, I'm tired of staying in the capital, so I'm planning to go out for a walk. I plan to make a trip to the Northern Wei Empire, and I won't be back for a long time." Northern Wei Dynasty. When Leng Shiqi heard these words, he guessed what Nine Leaf was going to do. Back in the demonic Miasma Mountain range, it was the people from the Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect who came to capture her. In order to survive, she self-detonated her great demon body, which had just passed the tribulation, and her cultivation was destroyed. Now that Nine Leaf had obtained the legacy of Underworld, her strength was no weaker than before. Furthermore, she still had a lot of room for improvement. Once she completely recovered to a rank 7 great demon, her strength would skyrocket, so it was time for her to take revenge. The Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect were both in the Northern Wei Empire. Leng Shiqi sighed inwardly. Nine Leave wasn't going to relax as if she was just going for a stroll. At the same time he was a little worried. The Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect were both top sects, and they weren't like the Thousand Illusionary Sword sect, which had declined for decades. They were still at their peak. The Imperial Beast Abode had a total of 3 Beast Kings, and each of them was in the Sky Origin realm. In addition to the spirit beasts they raised, they were comparable to 5 or 6 Sky Origin realm cultivators. The Blood Beast sect's strength was similar to the Imperial Beast Abode's. How could it be easy to take revenge on these two top sects? Even if Nine Leave had the strength of the Sky Origin realm, it was very likely that she would die. Leng Shiqi secretly opened the system store and exchanged a large amount of experience pills and advancement pills. Senior Nine Leave, you can take these things. Looking at these pills, Nine Leave seemed to be stunned for a moment, and her heart inexplicably throbbed. She also knew that Leng Shiqi had already guessed what she was going to do. For a long time she wouldn't be able to help Leng Shiqi. It could be said that these most precious pills were given to her by Leng Shiqi for free. The two of them had always existed in the form of a transaction. As a great demon, Nine Leave naturally had her own pride. Although Leng Shiqi's potential and strength were quickly catching up to Nine Leave, she still looked at Leng Shiqi as a junior. In her impression, Leng Shiqi was also a person who wouldn't do anything without benefits. At this moment she couldn't help but feel suspicious. Nine Leave frowned, then opened her mouth and spat out a purple light. I won't take these things for free. This wisp of demon energy contains 10% of my power, which is enough to save your life. If you die, I will lose some of my soul power, she added. After speaking, she turned into a purple light and disappeared into the horizon. Sigh. Leng Shiqi sighed faintly. He wasn't worried about anything else. With Nine Leaves' personality, she wouldn't openly barge into the Imperial Beast Abode or the Blood Beast sect. He sighed, but in reality he was sighing for the two top sections. In the near future they would probably have a headache. However, this wasn't something that Leng Shiqi needed to worry about. He was prepared to worry about his own matters first. After destroying the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, there were still many things that he needed to deal with. When he returned to the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, he first ordered everyone to take the resources back to their homes, but he had to stay alone for a while. Not long after he came to a deep pool in the back of the mountain. A person appeared inside. It was Oziu, who had secretly destroyed the Thousand Illusion 9 Pavilion Sword formation. As soon as he came out he directly asked, "Brother Lu, you hid it from me." Oziu was naturally referring to the fact that Leng Shiqi had hidden his identity as one of the 4 chiefs from him, as well as the fact that he had joined forces with the Discipline Commission, the East Guarding Thunder Flame Army, and the Imperial Hall of Worship to destroy the Thousand Illusion Sword sect. Leng Shiqi smiled apologetically. "Brother Ziyu, don't blame me. If I had said that from the beginning, you probably wouldn't have believed me at all. On the contrary, you would have thought that I was talking nonsense. Then there would be no possibility of cooperation." He originally thought that Oziu would be more or less angry, but unexpectedly Oziu said indifferently, "It doesn't matter. The Thousand Illusion Sword sect has been destroyed. I didn't kill a single person, so it can be considered as repaying their kindness." The destruction of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect was equivalent to Oziu taking revenge. "Then what do you plan to do after this, Brother Ziyu?" Leng Shiqi asked. Oziu fell silent. He had been cultivating wholeheartedly for several years just to take revenge. Now that the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, a top sect, had been destroyed, he suddenly lost his goal and didn't know what to do. "I don't know either. Let's just take a walk first." He sighed slightly. Leng Shiqi's expression changed. "Brother Ziyu, why don't you make a trip to the Western Desolate Prefecture? There are some of my subordinates there that I need Brother Ziyu's help to take care of. Moreover, from Pinghui Prefecture to the Western Desolate Prefecture, you can almost cross the Thunder Flame Dynasty. Of course, I won't let Brother Ziyu work for nothing. Here is the complete rank 8 cultivation technique, the Thousand Illusion Sword scripture, and the first 3 levels of the 5 God Flowing Light technique." As he spoke he took out 2 jade slips. Oziu pondered for a moment and also took out a jade slip. "These are the first 3 levels of the Thousand Revolutions Illusory World technique." Leng Shiqi smiled lightly. It was done. Chapter 709. After Oziu left, Leng Shiqi entered the Mansion of the Dead with a thought. The first thing he did after entering was to find 7 souls. These were the experts of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, including the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder and Wei Qian. Leng Shiqi looked at the soul of the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder, which was obviously more solid than the others, and his expression was not so numb. He summoned the soul of the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder and prepared to turn him into a ghost slave. He was also very curious about what the soul of a Tianyuan realm expert would look like after being turned into a ghost slave, and how strong would it be. However, Leng Shiqi suddenly stopped. He thought that after the Mansion of the Dead was upgraded, the power of the ghost slave would also increase. Now that he had met the requirements to upgrade the Mansion of the Dead, he might as well wait for the upgrade to become a ghost slave. He came to the gate of the Fengdu city and saw the requirements to upgrade the Mansion of the Dead, the current level of the Mansion of the Dead, level 3. The requirements to upgrade the Mansion of the Dead. 1. Recruit 3 members of the Mansion of the Dead, March 3rd. 2. Collect 2 high-level souls, February 2nd. 3. 40,000 system coins. Leng Shiqi did not hesitate to exchange 40,000 system coins and chose to upgrade the Mansion of the Dead. Then he was pushed out of the Mansion of the Dead by a repulsive force. This time he was prepared in advance and was already waiting for the system prompt. The upgrade of the Mansion of the Dead will take 10 natural days. During the upgrade, the mansion system will not be available. 10 days. Leng Shiqi murmured. These 10 days would be his most uncertain time. Fortunately, the battle was over. He only needed to deal with some follow-up matters and then return to the imperial capital. There should be no more accidents. Then, he hid himself in the vicinity and began to consolidate his cultivation. After he absorbed the remnant souls of the Thousand Illusion Sword Elder and many experts, his cultivation also broke through to the 8th level of the Spirit Gang realm. Although he had a strong foundation, he had just broken through to the 7th level of the Spirit Gang realm not long ago. The gap in cultivation was too big and he needed to consolidate it well. Leng Shiqi cultivated steadily for 3 days. He calculated that the people of the Dark Thunder Guards should have returned to Pinghui City. Then he instantly teleported to Pinghui City in a tricolored divine light. When he walked into the Dark Thunder Manor, everyone saluted him respectfully. Now, his name had been deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. This name represented an unimaginable skill and strength. Wu Yanming and Deng Xinlei came out with faces full of joy. At the same time, they knelt on the ground and shouted, "Greetings, my lord." The 3 of them were powerful cultivators in the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm, but when they fought with Yu Qiyan, they were beaten by Yu Qiyan to the point that they could not fight back. However, Mr. Liu, who was in Gang Spirit realm, was able to severely injure Wei Qiyan. If Wei Qiyan hadn't had a life-saving trump card, he would have been killed on the spot. Not to mention Leng Shiqi's shocking feat of killing the Thousand Illusion Sword Master. Now the 3 of them were completely in awe of Leng Shiqi. In these 3 days, the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, the Machine Pass City, the Bright Mirror Palace, and the Thousand Illusionary Sword Sect, had been annihilated in a thunderous manner. This had shaken the entire Falling Star continent. The replacement of the top sects had happened before, but this kind of thing might not happen for decades or even hundreds of years. After all the top sects had powerhouses in Tianyuan realm, but the number varied. However, it was too difficult to kill a powerhouse in Tianyuan realm. Even when facing a powerhouse like the Thousand Illusion Sword Master, the Thunderfire dynasty had sent 2 powerhouses in their peak state to besiege him. This could be seen from this. In addition, each top sect had been passed down for at least 100 years. They had collected a huge amount of resources, had a deep foundation, and had all kinds of trump cards. If one wanted to annihilate a sect, he must have the strength to completely crush it. Looking at the ranking of sects in the world, except for the most mysterious Yin and Yang temples, the current 3 dynasties, and the semi-hidden 4 Saint spiritual realm, it was extremely difficult for other sects to annihilate another top sect. Only a colossus like the Thunderfire dynasty could annihilate 3 top sects at the same time. There were also dozens of top sects that suffered along with them. Now, on the Falling Star continent, from ordinary people to high officials and nobles, all admired the courage of the Thunderfire dynasty. They also admired Lei Qingjuan's iron fist. The relationship between the Empire and the Spirit Cultivator sects had always been the biggest headache for the 3 empires. Yet, Lei Qingjun had boldly and decisively annihilated dozens of peak and first-rate sections. This action had probably frightened all the Spirit Cultivator sects in the Thunderfire Empire. In fact, it was indeed so. If the Thunderfire dynasty had annihilated a top sect, the other sects might feel that the Thunderfire dynasty had gone overboard and might even secretly join hands to fight against the dynasty. However, Lei Qingjun did it all. This really scared all the sects out of their wits. They did not even have the slightest intention to resist. Instead, they all holed up, sealed their mountains and went into seclusion. The entire Thunder Fire Dynasty sects instantly became well-behaved. Among them, Lung Shiqi's name spread throughout the Falling Star continent. It was simply too absurd for a late-stage spirit astral realm cultivator to kill a sky origin realm cultivator. Many people did not believe it and thought that the Thunder Fire Dynasty deliberately made him famous. However, his reputation had indeed reached an unprecedented level. Now, the names that were mentioned the most in the Falling Star continent were Lei Qingjun and Lu Xingji. Lung Shiqi also guessed some of the reactions of the outside world. He said indifferently, "Get up. Have the follow-up matters of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect been arranged properly?" Wu Yi immediately replied, "Sir, don't worry. There are no more disciples of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect in this world. Right now there are no more top sects in the Pinghui Prefecture. This is great news for the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. As long as we take advantage of this period of time to rope in those who should be roped in and suppress those who should be suppressed, this subordinate dares to guarantee that there will not be any major problems for the next few decades." Very good. However, do you remember this seat once asked who is in charge of the Pinghui Prefecture? Lung Shiqi asked this question for the third time. Wu Yi bowed and said, "Naturally it's Sir Lu." He knew very well that the strength and potential of the Lung Shiqi in front of him could be said to be abnormal. Even though Manager Hai's qualifications were very high, he was also very old. Whether or not Manager Hai would be part of the Dark Thunder Guards in the future was still uncertain. However, with Lung Shiqi's age, he could at least continue to be one of the four great managers for a few more decades. It was even possible for him to become the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards. If he had to choose between Manager Hai and Lung Shiqi, Wu Yi would definitely choose Lung Shiqi without hesitation. Lung Shiqi nodded and smiled. "All right then. You will follow me back to the Imperial capital to take over the position of Imperial Eunuch. As for Pinghui Prefecture, Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei will take care of it." Hearing this, Wu Yi, Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei all had different thoughts. Wu Yi understood very well that Lung Shiqi's actions were nothing more than to let his people completely control Pinghui Prefecture. As for Wu Yi himself, entering the Imperial capital to follow Lung Shiqi was also a good choice. The only thing that gave him a headache was that he didn't dare to meet Manager Hai. In addition, Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei were also very happy. They were Imperial Eunuch envoys themselves. Although their status was slightly higher than that of the patrol envoy, they were definitely inferior in terms of benefits. Now that they had temporarily taken over Pinghui Prefecture, it was because of Lung Shiqi's trust in them that they could take advantage of this opportunity to gain some benefits. Therefore, the three of them were very satisfied. Lung Shiqi did not waste any time. After arranging everything, he brought Wu Yi back to the Imperial capital. Chapter 710. When Lung Shiqi walked out of the interdomain transfer array in the Imperial capital, he stopped in his tracks. Behind him, Wu Yi opened his mouth and almost cried out in surprise. Because at this moment several people were standing there to welcome them. They were the Dark Lightning Guard's four chiefs, Eunuch Gao, Steward Hai, Shintu Zhen, Grand Commander Heavenly Master He Yen, and an expert from the Imperial Hall of Worship, Old Man. These people were all great figures whose names shook a region. At this moment they had actually come together to welcome Lung Shiqi. Old Man's voice suddenly entered Lung Shiqi's ears. "How is it, brother? This is quite a lineup, isn't it?" Hearing this, Lung Shiqi almost guessed it in his heart. It seemed that the old man had added fuel to the fire behind his back to support him. Old Man should know that Lung Shiqi was the weakest of the four chiefs. This time he took advantage of Lung Shiqi's great achievements to welcome him. This was equivalent to the other three chiefs acknowledging Lung Shiqi's position. At the same time they knew that Old Man, a sky origin expert, was on Lung Shiqi's side. Lung Shiqi transmitted his voice, "Thank you, brother." "Ah, no need to be so polite." Lung Shiqi then walked to Heavenly Master He Yen and cupped his fist. "Greetings, Grand Commander." Heavenly Master He Yen also looked at Lung Shiqi. "You are giving me more and more surprises. I look forward to seeing how far you can go in the future." This time, the Dark Lightning Guard has contributed greatly to the Thunderflame Dynasty's annihilation of many sections. The Dark Lightning Hall has already set up a banquet for you. "Thank you, Grand Commander." At the banquet, the Dark Lightning Guard was clearly much more enthusiastic towards Lung Shiqi. It was completely different from the banquet when he was promoted to Grand Commander. Now, most people had acknowledged Lung Shiqi's identity as one of the four great chiefs. He now had the authority to supervise 4 provinces and counties, and his name was known throughout the region. After the wedding banquet, Leng Shiqi politely rejected all the people who wanted to make friends with him and immediately locked himself in the secret cultivation room. He had accidentally used the 4 spirits formation diagram when he was fighting with Wei Lian. That was when he used the spirit techniques of the 16 heavens transformation mantra that represented the 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire. Leng Shiqi believed that even the Li family's ancestor, who created the 16 heavens transformation mantra, had not been able to do this. The 4 spirits array diagram seemed to contain a power that he couldn't understand, and he needed to figure it out. He also obtained the supreme technique of the 1000 Illusion Sword sect, the 1000 Illusion Sword scripture, which was very compatible with his Chaotic Blossom's bewildering eye. As long as he comprehended a part of it, he would be able to greatly increase the power of his Chaotic Blossom's bewildering eye. He had also exchanged for the 1000 Revolutions illusory world technique from Oziu. This was a technique that specialized in illusions, and it could also allow Leng Shiqi's mental strength to have more room to display. In addition, he had comprehended something after using the Divine Sword Clear Radiance. It just so happened that he could wait for the underworld to level up. It could be said that he had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Therefore, when Leng Shiqi's reputation was at its peak, he chose to go into seclusion. In this way, not only did he not offend anyone, but the people of the Dark Thunder Guards admired him even more. A young man who was famous, powerful, had monstrous potential, and held a high position. To not be arrogant and impatient, and continue to cultivate in seclusion, this was the true pride of the heavens. Time passed very quickly and 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Leng Shiqi opened his eyes on time. A system message appeared in front of him. Territory level up successful. Leng Shiqi hurriedly entered the underworld with a hopeful look on his face. As soon as Leng Shiqi entered underworld, he immediately felt something different. He hadn't even looked around in detail, but all of the places within underworld appeared in his mind, each and every one of them existing in his heart. It was as if he was the master of this world. Leng Shiqi finally felt a little gratified because this was the ability that the master of the underworld should have. After the upgrade, the underworld had a radius of 1,000 miles, and the mountains rose and fell one after another. The river of forgetfulness poured down like the water of the 9 heavens, and there was a huge blood moon in the sky that flickered, and there were tens of thousands of souls floating on the ground. It could be said that it had some resemblance to the 9 Netherhell. The spirit energy here was also much more abundant, but this kind of spirit energy was more suitable for people who cultivated demonic arts. If other spirit cultivators cultivated here, it would be half the result with twice the effort. What he cared about the most was not the changes in the environment. With a thought, he instantly arrived in front of the gate of Fengdu City. And the gate that had been closed for a long time finally opened. Walking into Fengdu City, Leng Shiqi suddenly felt that this was not a city, but another heaven in this subworld. Because he was in Fengdu City, the feeling it gave him was completely different. If it was said to be gloomy below, then there was a sense of solemnity here. He looked up, and the most eye-catching things in Fengdu City were the huge and dark palaces. These were the 10 kings of hell. Among them, the palaces of King Qingguang, King Ping, and King Luanzhuan all flickered with a faint light, and the others were incomparably dim. This meant that the 3 palaces already had their own masters, which were Yushu, Mingming, and Oziu. What surprised Leng Shiqi the most was that there were actually 6 whirlpools that almost covered the sky at the end of Fengdu City. That was the 6 paths of reincarnation. The 6 paths were divided into 3 good paths and 3 evil paths. The 3 good paths were the heavenly path, the human path, and the Azura path. The 3 evil paths were the hungry ghost path, the birth path, and the hell path. According to legend, after a person died, their soul would enter hell, and after a trial, their good and evil would enter different 6 paths of reincarnation. Then, since the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared in Leng Shiqi's underworld, did it mean that this place also had the ability to let people reincarnate? Leng Shiqi's eyes revealed a pondering expression. It was very simple to verify his thoughts. He turned around and went to the Palace of Lost Souls. There were already a large number of souls here, and after Fengdu City opened, they began to slowly walk into the city. Leng Shiqi followed all the way, and when the first soul that was about to be sent to the human path entered reincarnation, an extremely weak faint golden energy suddenly appeared and poured into Leng Shiqi's forehead. Strangely, he inexplicably knew that this was merit. As the saying goes, saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda, and Leng Shiqi sending people to reincarnation was even more meritorious. He still didn't know what the merit was for, but there was no harm in it. Then Leng Shiqi opened the territory system to see if there were any changes. Sure enough, the number of ghost slaves he could have had already increased to 8. He might as well turn the 1,000 Illusion Sword Master and the few Unity of Heaven realm experts of the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect into ghost slaves. What surprised him was that after the 1,000 Illusion Sword Elder turned into a ghost slave, he actually had the power of the union of heaven and man realm. Leng Shiqi thought about it and named him Sword Demon, and even gave him a 7th level spiritual sword. This was his strongest combat power. In addition, he also had an additional ability, the Netherlamp Phantom. He could contact the members of the underworld at any time in the underworld. This was not a 1,000-mile transmission, but he could use his identity as the master of the underworld to summon the members of the underworld to the underworld. Naturally, it was equivalent to face-to-face communication. This way, no matter where they were, he could directly contact them. It was really too convenient. Leng Shiqi was quite satisfied with the changes brought about by the underworld's upgrade this time. He immediately looked at the requirements for the next upgrade and began to prepare. Chapter 711. Underworld Territory Current Level, Rank 4. Underworld Territory Upgrade Requirements. 1. Recruit one of the 10 Kings of Hell, 0/1. 2. Collect 10 high-level souls, 0/10. 3. 80,000 system coins. The first thing that Leng Shiqi expected was the system coins. As expected, it doubled again. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi was rich now, so 80,000 system coins was not a problem. The number of high-level souls that needed to be collected had reached 10. If it was the Leng Shiqi in the past, it would have been difficult, but now it was not a big deal. The key was that spirit cultivators in the unity of heaven and man realm were not very common. He could not go to a top sect to kill people. So these 10 high-level souls were quite troublesome. The most troublesome thing was the first condition. The mission this time was still to recruit members of Underworld, but it was no longer quantity but quality. Among the members that Leng Shiqi had recruited in the past, except for Princess Carol who had not entered Underworld and received a title, the others were at least at the level of the 10 Kings of Hell. The first condition seemed simple, but among the people that Leng Shiqi was familiar with, the ones with the best talent and the highest comprehension had already been pulled into Underworld. Delta Origi, Yushu, and Ming Ming had all killed their way to Blood Fog Island together. Oziu was the most outstanding genius disciple of the top sect, 1,000 Illusionary Sword sect. As for Tu Deng and Jiuli, there was no need to talk about them. However, other than these people, Leng Shiqi's list of candidates was only Di Chuan and Wu Diao. Although these two were the winners of the elite club, their talent was still lacking compared to Delta Origi and Leng Shiqi. Moreover, the two of them were quite old, so they might not be able to receive a title from the 10 Kings of Hell. Zhuge Puha was very likely, but unfortunately he was a descendant of the Star Clan. Leng Shiqi did not trust the Zhuge family and the Star Clan, so he would not easily accept Zhuge Puha. In this way, the scope of his recruitment had become very small. This matter could only be done slowly. It was likely that Underworld would not be able to upgrade in a short period of time. Since that was the case, Leng Shiqi wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to test the effects of the Netherlamp Phantom body first. Then he formed a seal with his hands and streams of netherworld energy flowed out. At this moment, Delta Origi, who was in the headquarters of the Discipline Commission, suddenly had a change in expression. In her mind, an inexplicable thought of being summoned appeared. She was very familiar with that aura. It was Leng Shiqi. Delta Origi's eyes moved, then closed them again. In an instant, her consciousness appeared in the underworld. At this time, she and Leng Shiqi were a little surprised because Delta Origi did not appear in its original form. In front of Leng Shiqi, a gigantic phantom that was dozens of feet tall suddenly appeared. This phantom was dressed in a ferocious blood-red robe and had a crescent moon mask on its head. Ghostly chi constantly emanated from it. Yuanyang Mingyue Ghost Emperor. What's going on? Delta Origi was puzzled. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, she found that even her voice had changed. That voice sent chills down one's spine, yet it also made one feel reverence. Leng Shiqi's eyes moved. So this was the Netherlamp Phantom body. All members of the underworld who were summoned would appear in the form of a Dharma idol. This way the identities of each member would be protected. Only Leng Shiqi knew everyone's true identity. Of course, if others were willing to reveal their identities, it would be understandable. It was all voluntary. Leng Shiqi said, "This is an ability I discovered in the underworld. We can use this method to contact each other at any time. Delta Orgi understood. The underworld is indeed unfathomable. You're the same. At this point, Delta Orgi took a deep look at Leng Shiqi. Half a month ago, she suddenly heard that Leng Shiqi had become the new 4 great chiefs. This shocked her. Now, Delta Orgi was still having a headache fighting for the position of Deputy Punishment Envoy, but Leng Shiqi had directly become the 4 great chiefs. This huge gap made Gu San exclaim in amazement, but it was also hard for him to not be convinced. Fortunately, she had long known that Leng Shiqi was abnormal. After adjusting her mentality for 2 days, she felt better. However, a few days ago she heard that Leng Shiqi had killed the 1000 Illusion Sword Sect Sky Origin Stage expert, 1000 Illusion Sword Master. A Spirit Gang Realm expert killing a Sky Origin Stage expert. Delta Orgi's first reaction was disbelief. However, reliable news from the Discipline Commission confirmed that this was indeed the case. This gave Delta Orgi a great sense of defeat. Although she guessed that Leng Shiqi must have used some special method, in the end he had killed a Sky Origin Stage expert. This achievement was so terrifying that even Delta Orgi felt a little discouraged. She was afraid that she would never be able to catch up to Leng Shiqi in this lifetime. Leng Shiqi continued to make seals. Not long after, the Dharma bodies of King Qingguang and King Pingdeng also appeared. He summoned Yushu and Hengming. The 2 of them were also surprised when they arrived. Yushu even exclaimed, "Brother Leng, oh Brother Leng, I've heard of your great feats. TSK, you are the 4 great chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards. You even killed 1000 Illusion Sword Master. I really admire you." "That's enough. I called you here to talk business." Leng Shiqi stopped Yushu from continuing. Yushu's tone became serious. Go on, go on." Leng Shiqi's expression immediately became serious. "Now that I am the 4 great chiefs, I have the authority to supervise the 4 provinces. I can easily gather large amounts of resources. At the same time, I can make many arrangements in secret. Hengming, the Purgatory Demon sect you belong to is in Tianshan County. It is under my supervision. I will do my best to help you get to the top. If you need anything, just tell me directly." Hengming didn't answer. He only nodded silently. Then Leng Shiqi said to Delta Orgi, "The Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards have some missions that need to be completed together. That is why we have a good relationship. When my foundation is more stable, I will be able to help you." "I know," Delta Orgi said simply. Yushu immediately became very envious. Leng Shiqi was now a moving money tree. It was a pity that the Extreme Blade Hall he belonged to was in the north of the Thunderblaze dynasty and didn't fall under Leng Shiqi's supervision. He couldn't get anything. Leng Shiqi naturally knew what Yushu was thinking. He waved his hand and took out dozens of jade slips. With a flick of his finger, these jade slips immediately emitted waves of light. Words flowed on the light screen. Seeing these words, Delta Orgi and the others were delighted. This was because these jade slips recorded techniques and spiritual skills of rank 6 and above. These were things that Leng Shiqi had taken from Li Jueqing and 1000 Illusion Sword Master. He picked out the ones that were most suitable for Delta Orgi and the others. With these techniques and the legacy of the underworld, Leng Shiqi believed that their strength would increase greatly in a short period of time. Strength meant that they would be able to gain the favor of the upper echelons and accumulate more merits. From there, they would be able to climb up the ranks step by step. I hope that all of you can increase your strength as soon as possible. It is not for your respective factions or the Blood Garment Pavilion. It is for ourselves. Chapter 7:12. Delta Orgi and the others did not stand on ceremony with Leng Shiqi. In fact, when they decided to join the underworld, they were already tied to Leng Shiqi. The 4 of them did not kill their way out of the Blood Mist Island to be the Blood Garment Pavilion's tools. They did not dare to betray the Blood Garment Pavilion, but at the very least they had to leave a way out for themselves. Delta Orgi memorized all the spiritual techniques that were suitable for her, then asked, "Now that you have made the fastest progress in the Blood Seed plan and have reached the true upper echelons of the Thunderblaze dynasty, I think the Blood Garment Pavilion will contact you soon." "I've already thought of that," Leng Shiqi said. Previously, Ink Frost Ghost Man always arranged for the Blood Garment Pavilion's people to be by my side at the most suitable time. Not only does he know my whereabouts like the back of his hand, but he also knows the various forces in the Imperial capital very well. I guess the Blood Garment Pavilion's Blood Seed plan is far more than just the 4 of us. Perhaps they had this plan a long time ago. In the Imperial capital, There are even people from the Blood Garment Pavilion in the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. The Blood Garment Pavilion has big plans. Next, they will definitely give me all the missions and use my identity to do things. Although this will be a little troublesome, it is also possible to find out the Blood Garment Pavilion's ultimate goal. Delta Origi said, "It's good that you know it in your heart. That's all for today. You all should hurry up and cultivate." After Leng Shiqi reminded them, everyone dispersed. When Leng Shiqi returned to his secret room, he heard a commotion outside. He frowned and walked out. He saw that most of the experts under his command had gathered here. Deputy Manager Ren Yi, who was the leader, said in a deep voice, "My lord, news just came from the palace. His Majesty is critically ill. I'm afraid he can't hold on." So fast. Leng Shiqi was very surprised. He had seen Lei Qingjun up close. With Lei Qingjun's physical condition, he seemed to be able to hold on for a year and a half. If those experts in the divine origin realm were willing to help, it would not be difficult to keep him alive for a while longer. Why was he suddenly critically ill? Not to mention that Lei Qingjun had just annihilated dozens of top-notch and first-rate sections. His reputation was unprecedentedly high. As the saying goes, when a person encounters a happy event, he would be in high spirits. He should be happy. However, Leng Shiqi suddenly thought that perhaps it was because Lei Qingjun had already done what he wanted to do the most and had no other worries in his heart. It could also be said that his body had been on the verge of collapse for a long time. It was only by relying on his willpower that he was able to hold on until now. The question Leng Shiqi was most concerned about was who the crown prince was. Seeing that Lei Qingjun was on the verge of death, it meant that the Thunderfire dynasty would soon have a new emperor. Leng Shiqi and the other important officials were naturally concerned about who the next emperor would be. After the incident with Air Scar Sky, the four most promising princes had their titles and authority stripped away. They were all placed under house arrest in their own mansions. On the other hand, the princes who had been chased away to their fiefdoms were summoned to the imperial capital. However, at that time, Leng Shiqi happened to be in Pinghui County. After he returned, he went into seclusion. Therefore, no one knew who had obtained the position of crown prince. Therefore he asked, "Which prince is the current head of the Eastern Palace?" Ren Ye's expression stiffened. He said, "Sir, you may not know, but the position of the Eastern Palace is still vacant." The position of crown prince is still vacant? Leng Shiqi could not understand. Since Lei Qingjun knew that he could not hold on any longer and had summoned the candidates to the imperial capital, why had the crown prince not been chosen yet? Lei Qingjun should know very well that if he died before appointing a crown prince, the Thunderfire dynasty would definitely fall into internal strife. Perhaps the stability that he had just established for the Thunderfire dynasty would be lost because of this. Leng Shiqi did not think that Lei Qingjun would be so stupid. He also did not think that Lei Qingjun would not have thought of this. Therefore, Leng Shiqi felt that Lei Qingjun had either not made up his mind or was plotting again. He was plotting with his own life. This was not impossible. Lei Qingjun had used his birthday banquet to set up layers of chess, including the entire Thunderfire dynasty and the various princes. What if Lei Qingjun had purposely spread the news that he was in critical condition? What was his goal? Ren Yi saw that Leng Shiqi did not speak, so he continued, "Not long ago, His Majesty summoned the slaughtering king, King Hui, and King into the imperial capital, intending to choose one of the three to succeed the throne. However, forgive this subordinate for speaking bluntly. Among the three princes, King Hui is addicted to wine, King In is a martial arts fanatic, and the slaughtering king is a mediocre person. None of them can take on such a great responsibility. In comparison, the first prince, fourth prince, ninth prince, and 13th prince are all many times stronger than them. What a pity." Leng Shiqi also understood Ren Ye's meaning. In fact, Lei Haoyin and the others were all good candidates to succeed the throne. However, because they had colluded with the spirit cultivator sect, they were placed under house arrest by the furious Lei Qingjun. On the other hand, the slaughtering king Lei Haoga and the others were not capable. They were caught in a dilemma, so the position of crown prince was still vacant. Leng Shiqi didn't know much about King Hui and King In. If he had to choose a general among the dwarves, Lei Haoga had the highest chance. He had interacted with Lei Haoga for a period of time. The slaughtering king was not very bright, but at least he had some. Furthermore, he had never given up on Leng Shiqi. Just as they were talking, a eunuch hurried over and bowed. "Chief Steward Liu, His Majesty has summoned His Majesty to the palace." Leng Shiqi secretly transmitted to Ren Yi, "Withdraw all of your forces in case anything happens." This subordinate obeys. Following this, Leng Shiqi followed the eunuch into the palace. On the way he met a few important officials of the imperial court. Looking at the situation, it seemed that Lei Qingjuan's time really was running out. Leng Shiqi quickly entered the palace and waited in the main hall. He turned to look and saw that the Grand Commander, Heavenly Sovereign He Yan, Steward Hai, and Shintazhen had already arrived. In addition, the Grand Commander of the Discipline Commission and the 4 punishment envoys were all present. There were also many officials coming in. Only Eunuch Gao was not present. As His Majesty's personal attendant, he should be by Lei Qingjuan's side. The officials were all whispering to each other, and the atmosphere in the hall was very heavy. After about an hour, just as everyone was getting anxious from waiting, the humble prince walked into the hall with heavy steps. Behind him were 3 dejected people. The slaughtering King Lei Haoge was one of them. Leng Shiqi guessed that the other 2 were probably King Hui and King, and judging from their expressions, it seemed that neither of them had obtained the position of crown prince. He was even more confused as to what Lei Qingjun wanted to do. As soon as the humble prince appeared, the hall immediately quieted down. He stood at the front of the crowd, in other words, in front of the dragon throne. His Majesty has passed away. Chapter 7:13. Hearing the words passed away, the hall suddenly fell silent for a while. However, the sound of crying was immediately heard. The crying was truly heart-wrenching, as if their loved ones had died. The humble prince looked at all of this expressionlessly, because he had seen this scene dozens of years ago. It was almost the same as the one he had seen before. After a quarter of an hour, the middle-aged man standing at the head of the officials wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Your Highness, the country can't go a day without a ruler. I wonder which prince His Majesty appointed as the crown prince before his death? I will do my best to assist the new emperor and raise the prestige of the Thunderfire dynasty. The person who spoke was the current prime minister of the Thunderfire dynasty, Mo Linhui. When he asked this question, the crying in the grand hall stopped abruptly, and all the people looked at the humble prince. As officials, they were most concerned about who the new emperor would be. After all, the new emperor had his own officials. Whether they could continue standing here would be decided by the new emperor. However, the humble prince said something unbelievable. He said, His Majesty only appointed half a crown prince. Half a crown prince? Leng Shiqi also felt that these 4 were very strange. The position of crown prince was not an object. If there was one, there was one. If there was no one, there was no one. What did he mean by only half a crown prince? In addition, perhaps once bitten, twice shy. He did not believe that Lei Qingjun was really dead. Everyone else was stunned. The humble prince continued, His Majesty left a verbal order before he passed away. The slaughtering king Lei Haoge will temporarily enter the Eastern Palace but cannot inherit the throne. His Majesty gave the slaughtering king a year. During this year, the slaughtering king and I will govern together. Leng Shiqi finally understood. It turned out that Lei Qingjun had chosen the slaughtering king Lei Haoge out of the 3 of them. However, Lei Qingjun also knew that Lei Haoge was still not capable enough. He was still a bit worried and wanted to use a year to train him. Not to mention what contributions Lei Haoge could make. As long as he didn't cause any trouble within a year, the throne would be firmly in his grasp. Lei Haoge was also overjoyed. He obviously didn't know about this before and thought that Lei Qingjun didn't choose any of them. The officials, led by Mo Linhui, immediately knelt before Lei Haoge and said, Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Long live Your Highness. Lei Haoge's face lit up with joy. Everyone please rise. Rise. Seeing this, the humble prince frowned slightly, but the frown disappeared immediately. In his opinion, Lei Haoge was too impatient. Lei Qingjun had just died and he was already acting like an emperor. The civil and military officials did not care about this. The younger Lei Haoge was, the more incompetent he was. This was actually a good thing for them. If the emperor was too shrewd and far-sighted, they, as courtiers, would have to tread carefully as if they were walking on thin ice. But if it was the other way around, it would be completely different. Facing a useless ruler, they would naturally be able to use their power for personal gain. Rumble. Just as everyone stood up, a violent tremor came from the palace gates. All the powerhouses in the palace looked toward the palace gates at the same time, including Leng Shiqi. He did not need to activate his supercilious eyes to sense a powerful force of the oneness of heaven and men's state rushing toward them rapidly. That force contained horrifying flames and coldness. Only one person could have such a strange force, and that was the Crown Prince Lei Haoyan. As expected, A human-shaped ferocious beast wrapped in purple flames broke through the imperial guards and rushed to the gate of the palace. Those courtiers who did not have high cultivation immediately ran behind Leng Shiqi and the others in a panic. The purple flames suddenly disappeared, and Lei Haoyin, who looked determined, appeared. At this moment, a dozen people appeared behind Lei Haoyin and surrounded him. All of them were in the oneness of heaven and men's state. Lei Haoyin looked directly at the humble prince and said in a deep voice, "I want to see my father." The humble prince closed his eyes and sighed slightly. "Lei Haoyin, do you know how serious a crime it is to break into the palace?" "I know." Lei Haoyin's voice suddenly became louder. "I also know that with my uncle and the powerhouses of the Imperial Hall of Worship here, I can't break through. Now I just want to see my father again. I want to ask him face to face why I am inferior to them." Lei Haoyin pointed at Lei Haoge and the other two. "If my father wants to pass the throne to Lei Haoren or Lei Haoyun, I have nothing to say. I also believe that they have the ability to rule the Thunderfire dynasty. However, if my father really gives the throne to these three good-for-nothings, I won't accept it." Hearing this, Lei Haoge, King Hui and King An felt as if they had swallowed a fly. This was especially true for Lei Haoge, who had just become half the heir to the throne and was recognized by all the civil and military officials. Now, Lei Haoyin was pointing at him and calling him a good-for-nothing. He was so angry that he had already decided to tear Lei Haoyin into pieces after the registration. In fact, he also thought that whether it was Lei Haoyin, Lei Haoren or Lei Haoyin, they were all very good. Any one of them was qualified for the throne. Unfortunately, they had violated Lei Qingjuan's taboo. "Haoyin, you know best why you lost your chance. Colluding with the spirit cultivator sects is your father's reverse scale, but you can't see through it. You can't blame others for this." His tone was much gentler. Could it be that what my father did was right? Lei Haoyin was still unconvinced. "We have always been hostile towards the spirit cultivator sections. The discipline commission is in the open, and the Dark Thunder Guards are always watching them. However, this is not the way to go. It will only make the enmity between us and the spirit cultivator sects grow deeper and deeper. Even if my father's heavenly might descended and destroyed many top sects and first-rate sects, shocking the world, those forces do not dare to resist in the slightest. However, all of this will only continue to expand the conflict. One day this conflict will explode. The longer we suppress it, the more it will explode. At that time, the Thunderfire dynasty will only welcome the crazy counterattack of the spirit cultivator sections. If the Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty add insult to injury, the Thunderfire dynasty will be in danger. Right now, I just want to see my father and let him tell me in person that he wants to dethrone me. Otherwise, even if I die, I will not die in peace." He said so many words in a row, causing everyone to be stunned. However, immediately many ministers began to refute him. They felt that Lei Haoyin was spouting nonsense and worrying for nothing. However, in Leng Shiqi's heart, he felt that Lei Haoyin's words made some sense. When Leng Shiqi was still a supervisor, he had already noticed this point. Those sects and families were very resentful towards the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. However, they did not dare to speak out because they were afraid of the Thunderfire dynasty's power. The emperor shook his head. "Perhaps you are right, but you are one step too late. Your father has already passed away and passed the throne to the slaughtering king, Lei Haoge." Lei Haoyin was immediately stunned. Chapter 7:14. Lei Haoyin's eyes widened and became bloodshot. He suddenly roared, "No, I don't believe it." It was unclear whether he didn't believe that Lei Qingjun had died just like that, or that Lei Haoge had taken the throne. He glared at Lei Haoge with his bloodshot eyes. The purple flames around his body flickered like a wild beast. Lei Haoge felt a chill run through his body as he was stared at by an enraged unity of heaven cultivator. He couldn't help but shiver. Lei Haoyin clenched his fists and gathered the fire spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The amethyst frost flame burned fiercely, activating all the arrays in the hall. "Lei Haoyin, what are you doing?" the shoddy prince roared. No one had ever dared to make a move in this hall. "Die." Lei Haoyin turned into a stream of fire. The majestic purple flames seemed to want to devour everything. "You disappoint me too much." King Zhuozhen gently waved his hand, and the horrible purple flame was instantly extinguished. At the same time, a huge force slapped Lei Haoyin, sending him flying and crashing into the array in the hall. Lei Haoyin was covered in blood, but his bloodshot eyes were still staring at Lei Haoge. The first prince, Lei Haoyin, trespassed the palace and tried to harm the crown prince. He is stripped of his status and imprisoned for life. Take him away. The shoddy prince decided Lei Haoyan's fate with a single sentence. He had already shown mercy by not killing Lei Haoyan. Lei Haoyan was then dragged out. Lei Haoga sneered. At this moment he also realized that he was no longer the same person as before. So what if Lei Haoyan was strong? Could he be stronger than the imperial guards in the imperial hall of worship? He was already imagining how he would torture Lei Haoyan in the future. Leng Shiqi shook his head as he watched Lei Haoyan being dragged away. In fact, Lei Haoyan shouldn't have come today. It didn't matter when Lei Qingjun died. If he had hidden himself and accumulated strength, he might have had a chance to turn the tables. However, he had nothing now and even offended Lei Haoga. He would die a horrible death sooner or later. Minister Mo, yes, your majesty. Mo Linhui cupped his hands. His majesty has passed away. You should be in charge of the state funeral. Also, the slaughtering king, Lei Haoga, should be preparing for his coronation ceremony, but it's best to keep a low profile. Mo Linhui stole a glance at Lei Haoga. Seeing that he didn't seem to be dissatisfied, he immediately said, "Don't worry, your highness. This old subject will definitely make the appropriate arrangements. You have served 3 emperors, so I'm not worried. The crown prince will also need your advice." The humble king winked at Lei Haoga. Lei Haoga immediately stepped forward and said respectfully, "Minister Mo, please teach me. Your highness, this is what I should do." They kept calling him Your Highness the Crown Prince, which made Lei Haoga's heart burst with joy. When he thought about how he would be able to ascend to the throne in a year's time, he felt even more elated. Leng Shiqi could see this from Lei Haoga's expression. Since he could see it, the court officials were all sly old foxes. They probably didn't have a high opinion of Lei Haoga. After that, most of the officials returned to their homes. The rest had to arrange for the state funeral and the coronation ceremony as soon as possible. Leng Shiqi, Heavenly Lord He Yen, and the others returned to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters together. Heavenly Lord He Yen sighed. His Majesty's death was a bit sudden. There are still some things that have not been properly arranged. In the year before the Crown Prince ascends to the throne, we cannot let our guard down. The Grand Commander is right. However, I'm afraid that some people won't put their minds on supervision and instead focus on fighting for power, Steward Hai said as he stroked his long beard. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes. He had taken back Pinghui Prefecture. This Steward Hai couldn't help but want to make things difficult for him. However, he could only talk for now. At this critical juncture of the change of imperial authority, the Grand Commander would never allow the 4 chiefs to fight among themselves. Therefore, Leng Shiqi didn't even bother to say a word and kept his mouth shut. Heavenly Lord He Yen looked around and waved his hand. "You're all dismissed. Do your own things. I'll take my leave." The 3 of them left at the same time. During this time, Steward Hai kept looking at Leng Shiqi with ill intentions. However, Leng Shiqi didn't respond at all. When they separated, Steward Hai's expression suddenly changed. He seemed to be thinking about something. He's getting more and more shrewd. Not bad, not bad. Lei Qingjuan's state funeral was scheduled for 5 days later. As one of the 4 stewards, Leng Shiqi naturally had to attend. When the emperor died, the entire Thunderfire dynasty had to mourn for him for 3 days. Only when he saw Lei Qingjun being buried in the imperial mausoleum with his own eyes did Leng Shiqi confirm that he was really dead. This emperor, who was described as mediocre, had produced a shocking spark at the end of his life. He didn't waste his time in this world. Lei Haoga's coronation ceremony was 10 days after the state funeral. Leng Shiqi also went to go through the motions. There weren't many people invited to the coronation ceremony. Most of them were those who were in the main hall. The process was also relatively simple. After all, Lei Qingjun had just died and it wasn't appropriate to be too ostentatious. After the coronation ceremony ended, Leng Shiqi prepared to go back and cultivate in seclusion for a while. In any case, he now had control over the 4 major states and counties. It would be difficult for him to fight for supervisory authority in a short period of time. Moreover, he still had a large number of techniques and spiritual techniques to comprehend. He also planned to break through to the unity of heaven and man realm as soon as possible. Therefore, he could finally cultivate in seclusion peacefully. However, Lei Haoga's personal eunuch He stopped him. "Steward Liu, please wait. His Highness the Crown Prince has something to discuss with you." Leng Shiqi paused. His mind was spinning rapidly. He had worked together with Lei Haoga in Shantai County before. However, Lei Haoga's attitude back then wasn't very good. Could it be that Lei Haoga was preparing to settle the score now? Leng Shiqi sneered in his heart. If that wasn't the case, then so be it. However, if Lei Haoge really dared to anger him, he had more than 10 ways to kill Lei Haoge. Eunuch He, please lead the way. He and Eunuch He walked to a side hall. Lei Haoge was leaning on a golden scaled throne. When he saw Leng Shiqi, he immediately said, "Lord Liu, you're here. I've been waiting for a long time." Lei Haoge's tone was full of arrogance. In Leng Shiqi's eyes he felt like a nouveau riche. He said calmly, "What is it, Your Highness the Crown Prince? Just say it." "How dare you? How dare you be so rude to His Highness the Crown Prince?" The eunuch beside Lei Haoge immediately shouted. "Lord Liu is my esteemed guest. Back in Shantai County he helped me a lot. I'll let him off the hook," Lei Haoge said unhappily to the eunuch. However, there wasn't a trace of dissatisfaction in his words. Instead, he mentioned what happened in Shantai County. Leng Shiqi only felt a little amused. Lei Haoge had just become the crown prince and he was already so arrogant? If he were to become the crown prince, he would probably be so arrogant. "If Your Highness the Crown Prince doesn't have anything else to say, I'll take my leave." Leng Shiqi pretended to leave. Lei Haoge stood up. His expression darkened. "Lu Xingji, I'm already the Crown Prince. Are you still looking down on me? I'll be honest with you. Today I'll give you a chance to surrender. As long as you swear to be loyal to me forever, everything in the past can be written off. After I become the Crown Prince, the position of Dark Thunder Guard Commander will be yours sooner or later." Leng Shiqi understood that Lei Haoge wanted to rope him in and cultivate his own team. However, he pretended to be confused. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, what are you talking about? I'm naturally loyal to the Thunderblaze dynasty." Lei Haoge sneered. "Don't play dumb with me. If you don't obey me today, don't blame me for being rude. Come out." Immediately, 3 people walked out from the back of the side hall and surrounded Leng Shiqi. They were all experts in the unity of heaven and man realm. Chapter 7:15. As the Crown Prince, Lei Haoge naturally had some experts under him. The 3 of them formed a triangle around Leng Shiqi. "What is the meaning of this, Your Highness?" Leng Shiqi's expression also darkened. In fact, there was already a faint killing intent in his heart. "Lu Xingji, if you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me. Now this consort will ask you one last time, are you going to pledge allegiance to this consort or not?" Lei Haoge finally revealed his true intentions and roared fiercely. However, the more he acted like this, the more disappointed Leng Shiqi was in him. Perhaps Lei Haoge had been suppressed for too long, and suddenly a throne fell from the sky, causing some mental problems. At the same time, Leng Shiqi became more confident because he could see that Lei Haoge needed his support and strength. The Dark Thunder Guards were in charge of the world's intelligence. As the Crown Prince, Lei Haoge naturally couldn't take over the Dark Thunder Guards, so he needed the Dark Thunder Guards' intelligence to help him do things. Among the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Venerable He Yen wouldn't pay attention to him, and it would be difficult for the other 3 directors to submit to him. Director Hai's seniority was too high. His prestige in the Dark Thunder Guards was only second to the Grand Commander. Moreover, he was already old. How many years could he be one of the 4 directors? He wouldn't stand in line. Shintu Zhen had a strong military background. Lei Haoge didn't have any military power in his hands, so it was impossible for him to order Shintu Zhen around. As for Eunuch Gao, he was the previous emperor's personal attendant. He had followed the previous emperor for decades, and now his status was even higher. Even Lei Haoge, the Crown Prince, couldn't move him. Therefore, among the Dark Thunder Guards, only Leng Shiqi was the most suitable. As one of the 4 directors, his cultivation and power weren't high, so he was the most worthy person to be roped in. In fact, if Lei Haoge was polite and offered some practical benefits, Leng Shiqi might consider it. However, Lei Haoge was about to make a move, so it was impossible. "Lei Haoge, you really can't change your nature. Even if you become the Crown Prince or even the Emperor, you're still trash." Leng Shiqi couldn't be bothered to feign civility. "You." Lei Haoge was stunned at first, then immediately flew into a rage. "Lu Xingji, how dare you? Men, seize him." The 3 Unity of Heaven realm cultivators moved their spirit power, and waves of powerful spirit pressure rushed over. However, Leng Shiqi's expression didn't change. He turned to Eunuch He and said, "Eunuch He, you are a smart man. Lei Haoge has become the Crown Prince, but he hasn't made any progress. Instead, he is narrow-minded, arrogant, and unworthy of the position. Is this what you want to see? Also, do you really think that the 3 of them can keep me here? A spirit sword that emitted a faint rainbow-colored radiance suddenly appeared. The sword did not move, but that terrifying sword intent filled the entire side hall. The sharp sword chi instantly caused the 3 Unity of Heaven realm experts to retreat. Level 8 Earth Soldier. One of them shouted in shock. How is this possible? That is the treasure of the Thousand Illusion Sword sect, the Thousand Illusion Sword. Seeing that the situation was not good, Eunuch walked to Lei Haoge and said, Your Highness, Lu Xingji's strength is very strong, and he has the Thousand Illusion Sword. I'm afraid that the 3 of them really can't take him down. Your Highness, don't be impulsive. Think about it. Last time when he was in Shantai County, he was only at the late stage of the spiritual aperture realm, and he was just a supervisor. Now he is at the late stage of the gang spirit realm, and he is one of the 4 directors of the Dark Thunder Guards. His terrifying growth speed is too amazing. We'd better rope him in rather than make him an enemy. And we also need his strength to make your Highness sit firmly on the throne of the Crown Prince, so that you can make some achievements within a year. When your Highness ascends the throne in the future, you can do whatever you want with him. He secretly transmitted the last sentence and didn't say it out loud. It was also the last sentence that finally calmed Lei Haoge down. Lu Xingji, I won't force you. Go back and think about it. I'm waiting for your answer. After saying that, Lei Haoge directly flicked his sleeves and left. Eunuch secretly sighed. The current Lei Haoge was indeed very different from before, but as a servant he could only persuade him a little. He waved his hand to let the 3 masters leave and turned to Leng Shiqi and said, Lord Lu, His Highness is young and impetuous after all. Please don't take it to heart. Lord Lu, you can also think about what His Highness said. His Highness will never treat you badly. Leng Shiqi didn't believe it. He said a few perfunctory words and turned to leave. After returning to Xingji Pavilion, he arranged all kinds of things and prepared for seclusion. As for the matter that Lei Haoge asked him to think about, he didn't take it to heart. Among the various forces controlled by the Thunderflame dynasty, there were 3 that were outside the imperial power. The first was the Imperial Hall of Worship, where there were countless experts. These people had always been elusive. As long as something extremely important didn't happen in the Thunderflame dynasty, they wouldn't show up. Naturally, the imperial power couldn't control them. In addition, there were the Dark Thunder Guards and the Discipline Commission. These 2 forces were directly under the Emperor. However, the Thunderflame dynasty didn't have an emperor now, so they were also in a situation where no one could control them. Therefore, Leng Shiqi concluded that Lei Haoge couldn't reach the Dark Thunder Guards, so he prepared to ignore him and go into seclusion. However, when he was about to enter the secret chamber, 2 people found him. They were Feng Shamo and Sulwan, who hadn't shown up for a long time. After returning from the Western Wilderness Prefecture, they also went into seclusion. Now, Feng Shamo's cultivation was the same as Leng Shiqi's, at the 8th level of Gang Spirit Realm. And Sulwan also broke through to Gang Spirit Realm. They also knew about Leng Shiqi's recent achievements. Feng Shamo's eyes flashed with undisguised dissatisfaction and strong fighting spirit. He said, I heard that you killed Thousand Illusion Sword Master. Senior brother Feng, you must be joking. It's just luck. Sulwan didn't want to complicate things, so she continued, Your speed of improvement is incredible. No wonder Master and the others value you so much. You didn't disappoint them. Since you are now one of the 4 directors and have enough strength, we plan to go back to the Blood-Robed Pavilion. Leng Shiqi also felt that they should go. After all, their identities were still not perfect. Going back to the Blood-Robed Pavilion would save them from being exposed. Okay, I'll arrange it for you. The next time we meet, I'll definitely beat you. Feng Shamo left these words before leaving. Looking at Feng Shamo's back, Leng Shiqi suddenly thought that Feng Shamo might be a good choice to recruit into the underworld. With Feng Shamo's talent, it wasn't a big problem to obtain the inheritance of the 10 Kings of Hell. But the key was that Feng Shamo's identity was too sensitive, and he was arrogant and ambitious. Unless he could guarantee that Feng Shamo wouldn't reveal the underworld, he still had to consider carefully. Keeping this matter in mind, Leng Shiqi announced to the outside world that he would completely enter seclusion. Unless there was something urgent, no one was to disturb him. Chapter 7:16. Time flew by and soon half a year had passed. On this day the aura in Leng Shiqi's secret room was surging. The aura was visible to the naked eye under the blessing of the Yin and Yang spirit gathering formation with thousands of mid-grade spirit stones. Not only the aura, but also all kinds of spiritual power between heaven and earth were gathering madly. The secret room was like a black hole, constantly devouring all the spiritual power. In the center of the formation, Leng Shiqi sat cross-legged, and there was a flickering light in his dantian. What Leng Shiqi was doing now was to break through the realm of oneness of heaven and men. The realm of oneness of heaven and men was the last level of the four realms of heaven and men. Naturally, it was not so easy to break through. Spirit cultivators of Gang spirit realm combined external forces with their own spiritual power and stole a trace of spiritual power between heaven and earth to condense Gang spirit. At the same time, the spiritual power in their body also solidified into a spirit crystal. In the process from the first level of Gang spirit realm to the 9th level, the spirit crystal would become larger and more solid. And the more powerful the cultivation method was, the more solid the spirit crystal would be. Leng Shiqi was like this. His spirit crystal was at least several times more than that of ordinary Gang spirit realm cultivators. If one wanted to break through the realm of Gang spirit realm to oneness of heaven and men, one had to do an extremely difficult thing, that was to break one's own spirit crystal. Yes, a spirit cultivator finally condensed the spirit crystal, but in the end he had to break it. Because the realm of oneness of heaven and men was not only cultivating one's own spiritual power, but also communicating with the spiritual power of various elements in this world. Using the spiritual power of heaven and earth to replace one's own spiritual power was called oneness of heaven and men. As the essence of spiritual power of spirit cultivators, the spirit crystal had to be broken to achieve oneness of heaven and men if one wanted to cleanse the mortal body. However, it was easier said than done to break the spirit crystal. It was certainly not possible to rely on one's own strength, but if one asked for help, one's cultivation would be directly destroyed, which would not work either. The only way was to communicate with and mobilize the spiritual power of heaven and earth to break the spirit crystal. Unfortunately, how could the spiritual power of heaven and earth be mobilized at will? Therefore, at this point, comprehension was particularly important, even more important than the talent of cultivating spiritual power. Generally speaking, the geniuses in those sects were mainly talented in cultivation. Their cultivation methods were twice the result with half the effort. Perhaps it would only take a few years to achieve what others had achieved in more than 10 years. But after reaching the peak of Gang spirit realm, the advantage in this respect would become smaller and smaller. Spiritual power could be replaced by many foreign objects. For example, Leng Shiqi had reached the peak of Gang spirit realm by constantly swallowing Tiangang elixirs and refining all the Millennium Black Tortoise saliva in the past 6 months. However, comprehension wasn't something that could be provided by external objects. You were born with how much you had and it couldn't be changed. Now that it was time for comprehension, many of the so-called geniuses were confused. There were even many people who knew the method to break through and had already suppressed their own cultivation to prevent their spirit crystals from being too condensed and hard to break through. But even so, this barrier still blocked more than 80% of spirit cultivators in Gang spirit realm forever. This was also the reason why there were so few people at the Unity of Heaven realm. Leng Shiqi thought that his comprehension was very good. Although it was not as abnormal as Master Tuting, it was one of the best among the people he knew. This was not the most important thing. The important thing was that he had inadvertently touched a trace of the power of the law of heaven and earth before, which was far above the spiritual power of heaven and earth and the original power of heaven and earth. No matter how strong his spirit crystal was, he was not afraid. Because of this, Lin Yuanliang and the old man said that there was no pressure for Leng Shiqi to break through the unity of heaven and man realm. In fact, it was true. At this moment, the spiritual power in Leng Shiqi's body had reached a state of complete saturation. He was preparing to break the spirit crystal first, and then absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth to transform into his own power. With a thought, a white tiger shadow flashed behind him, and then turned into a breeze and disappeared into his dantian. Immediately, the breeze turned into several wind blades and instantly cut through his spirit crystal. Immediately after, several clear cracks appeared on his spirit crystal. As more and more cracks appeared, the spirit crystal suddenly shattered into countless fine powder. Leng Shiqi's face immediately turned pale. This was the most dangerous time to break through the unity of heaven and man realm. If he did not take advantage of this time to draw the spiritual power of heaven and earth into his body, his cultivation would be completely destroyed. Leng Shiqi patted his forehead, and a green mini Leng Shiqi came out. This was his primordial spirit. His primordial spirit left his body, and everywhere he saw, there were countless specks of light of different colors. The foundation of the unity of heaven and man realm would be determined at this moment. The more types and quantities of spiritual power of heaven and earth you could communicate with, the stronger your strength would be. The primordial spirit made a seal, and Leng Shiqi's whole body was shining with starlight. Star Atlas covered heaven and earth. Heavenly cosmic star gang. In this mysterious star universe, stars of different colors appeared again, and these stars all had a strong suction force, like a black hole, crazily absorbing all the spiritual power of heaven and earth. In the imperial capital, the unity of heaven and man realms suddenly looked at the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards in surprise. On the surface there was nothing, but they could clearly feel that the spiritual power of heaven and earth here was raging. Many of them thought that there were masters fighting in the Dark Thunder Guards. There were also many masters of the unity of heaven and man realm in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. They all ran to the Xingji Pavilion and raised their eyes. Occasionally, there was a trace of surprise in their eyes. This level of spiritual power of heaven and earth could not be attracted by anyone among them. It was clear that they had reached the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. If they remembered correctly, there were only Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei in the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm in the Xingji Pavilion, but both of them were in the Pinghui Prefecture. Did someone break through the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm from the early stage? They never thought that it was Leng Shiqi who broke through. There was a huge barrier between the Gang Spirit realm and the unity of heaven and man realm. It was unknown how many geniuses could not step through this barrier in their lives. In their impression, Leng Shiqi's cultivation made rapid progress. Even if he broke through the unity of heaven and man realm, it would be at least a few years later. In the secret chamber, Leng Shiqi's spirit returned to his body, and then his body glowed with dazzling light. All kinds of lights were intertwined, and the 9 colors were blurred and dazzling. At the same time in his star sea, a huge level 5 star gradually formed, and all the spiritual power in his body slowly transformed into the spiritual power of heaven and earth elements. Strangely, the star marks, black marks and golden dragon patterns on his spiritual crystal suddenly appeared again. Under the purification of the spiritual power of heaven and earth elements, they were connected and integrated with each other. In the end, they formed a black dragon pattern. There were a few star marks flashing on the dragon pattern which looked mysterious. The black dragon star pattern then flew to Leng Shiqi's spiritual star sea like a dragon in the 9th heaven, and then sank into his spirit. Leng Shiqi's spirit immediately underwent earth-shaking changes. His body expanded rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, he became the size of a 7 or 8-year-old child. The black dragon star pattern appeared on the forehead of the spirit. In an instant, the eyes of the spirit turned into a star eye and a golden eye, and a few black lines appeared in the corners of the eyes. This was no longer the spirit, but the divine soul that only the spirit caster of the Tianyuan realm could have. This was the divine soul that was born when the spirit cultivator merged his spiritual power with the power of heaven and earth. There was the will of heaven and earth in the spiritual power. Even if the physical body was destroyed, the spirit cultivator could survive alone by relying on the divine soul, and his strength would not be weakened too much. Leng Shiqi was able to condense a divine soul when he broke through to the unity of heaven and man realm, which he never expected. When Leng Shiqi's divine soul and spiritual energy reached a delicate balance, a terrifying spiritual pressure erupted from Leng Shiqi's body. The array in the secret room was instantly activated, but more than half of it was still destroyed. Leng Shiqi stood up and clenched his fist, and the spiritual power of heaven and earth within a radius of 10 li throbbed. Unity of heaven and man realm. Chapter 717. Leng Shiqi had never felt so powerful before. He felt like he was wandering in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. As long as he wanted, he could mobilize all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles. And he could mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth of any attribute. At this time, 2 7th-level spiritual techniques appeared in the heavenly cycle star technique at the same time. They were Star's Fall and Star God Armor. Because Leng Shiqi's breakthrough to the realm of oneness of heaven and men was too big a commotion, even the other 3 general managers were alarmed. Others might not be able to see it, but they could see that Leng Shiqi was breaking through. He actually broke through. The 3 of them were surprised and surprised. Leng Shiqi was too young. At his age, it was already a rare genius to have the cultivation of spirit aperture realm. But he was already in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. This was not the most terrifying thing but the speed of his progress. 2 years ago, when Leng Shiqi entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard, he was only in the middle stage of spirit aperture realm. In just 2 years he had cultivated to the realm of oneness of heaven and men. This was the most terrifying thing. In addition, Leng Shiqi's fighting power was also known to be abnormal. He killed a gang spirit realm expert in the middle stage of spirit aperture realm. Now that he was in the realm of oneness of heaven and men, how powerful would he be? Even Eunuch Gao and the other 2 general managers felt some pressure. Before, Leng Shiqi, as one of the 4 general managers, was criticized the most for his cultivation. Now that he had broken through to the realm of oneness of heaven and men, his strength was not much weaker than theirs. This also meant that Leng Shiqi was officially qualified to compete with them for power and profit. After Li Jueqing's death, they had divided a lot of power, which should have been inherited by Leng Shiqi. Based on their understanding of Leng Shiqi, he would definitely not be willing to control 4 states. Leng Shiqi naturally noticed a large number of masters gathered outside the secret room. He did not rush to study the spiritual techniques. Instead he said, "Everyone, I was lucky to break through to the realm of oneness of heaven and men. I still need some time to consolidate. Forgive me for not being able to welcome you." What? Lu Xingji broke through to the realm of oneness of heaven and men. That's impossible. I remember that he had just reached the gang spirit realm when he came back from Shantai County more than a year ago. How could he break through so quickly? His talent is monstrous. It's not just talent. If one wants to break through to the unity of heaven and man realm, the most important thing is comprehension ability. This is what a true genius is. It's hard to imagine what level he will reach in the future. Maybe in 20 or 30 years, there will be another Sky Origin Stage cultivator in the Dark Thunder Guards. Everyone was shocked when they heard Leng Shiqi's words. They couldn't help but start discussing among themselves. In order to avoid being disturbed, Leng Shiqi released all 8 ghost slaves to guard around the secret room, and he himself had very important things to do. That was to completely obliterate the system's consciousness. This time, during the process of breaking through to the union of heaven and man realm, he was baptized by the heaven and earth elemental spiritual energy and unexpectedly condensed his divine soul. He took advantage of this opportunity to manipulate his divine soul to enter the depths of his soul again. Leng Shiqi was confident that he would be able to completely wipe out the system's consciousness this time. From then on he would have no more worries. When he was immersed in the depths of his soul, he was a little surprised. Because this time, the system's consciousness was not in a state of sleep. Instead, it was looking at Leng Shiqi with its arms crossed, as if it had known that Leng Shiqi would come. Leng Shiqi's divine soul raised his hand and set up a layer of flame-bounded domain. Then he began to speak. "Are you waiting for me?" "Yes." This time, the system's consciousness seemed to be very awake. It was not as mechanical or crazy as the previous 2 times. But the more the system's consciousness behaved like this, the more vigilant Leng Shiqi became. "What are you worried about? Are you afraid that I have some tricks up my sleeve?" The system's consciousness said with a smile, "Don't think too much. I'm no match for you. Isn't the purpose of your coming here to kill me? Congratulations, you're about to succeed." Leng Shiqi clenched his fist, and the shadow of the blood-soaked demon sword appeared. With his current strength, a short-lived divine epiphany was enough to kill the system's consciousness. He did not want to listen to the system's nonsense. It was a scourge, an invisible time bomb. No one knew when it would explode, so it had to be eliminated. However, just as he was about to strike, the system's consciousness said, "You did very well, much better than I did back then. You didn't rely on the system too much after you got it, so I didn't recover much of my strength. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been defeated so thoroughly. By the way, should I call you Leng Shiqi, Lu Xingji, or my next host?" Leng Shiqi's sword paused. What did the system's consciousness mean? "That's right. In fact, I'm not the system's consciousness that you think I am. I'm the previous host of this system, so I can be considered your senior." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's eyes widened. He had never thought of this situation. If the system's consciousness was not lying, then why did he become an extremely weak consciousness? Leng Shiqi knew how powerful the system was. He also relied on the system to achieve what he had today, so the previous host would not be too bad. How could he end up like this? A dying man speaks the truth. "There are some things that I can tell you," the system's consciousness said solemnly. "When I first got the system, I rose rapidly like you, but I never thought about the system's shortcomings. I always used the system to its fullest. When I reached the peak of that world, the system finally showed its fangs. The system was actually a vampire. It was sent to various small worlds to find suitable hosts, then quickly cultivated the host to become the strongest in the world. Then it would devour the host and in turn devour the entire world. And we are just the system's tools and nourishment. Leng Shiqi frowned. What the system's consciousness said was beyond his understanding, but it also confirmed that his first reaction when he got the system was to be vigilant. There was no such thing as a free lunch. This reminded him of when he met Lining in Shi City. He was possessed by an evil spirit and thought that he had obtained a great opportunity. Little did he know that if Leng Shiqi had not intervened, Lining would have ended up as food for the evil spirit statue. In this way, Leng Shiqi and Lining were essentially the same. Of course, this was based on the premise that the system's consciousness was not lying. The system's consciousness continued, "I know you don't believe me. I just want to tell you a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. The good news is that you did not rely too much on the system. You relied on your own abilities to come into contact with the laws of heaven and earth in this world. The bad news is that you think you're smart. After you found me and killed me for the first time, you obtained a portion of the system's authority, right? But other than that, you should have noticed that every time you exchange system coins, a wave of energy will enter your body. Is that right?" Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. The system's consciousness was right. He had wanted to explore it in the past, but that wave of energy never appeared again after it entered his body. He had no idea where to start. Actually, that's the nourishment that the system needs. Now that you've obtained a portion of that energy, guess what will happen? The system's consciousness sneered. Chapter 7:18. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed. He couldn't guess what the result would be, but it couldn't be good. The system's consciousness pointed at itself and said, "Look at me now. I only realized the system's goal at the end and did something similar to you, which was to kill the system. I succeeded, but I also failed. I'm different from you. I used the system too much, and in the end I tried my best to kill the system and I became the system's person with the highest authority. But there was a problem, and that was that the power that should have been given to the system was transferred to me. At that time I was already seriously injured and couldn't bear that strange power at all. Since then I was assimilated by the system and finally became what I am now. That is the system's consciousness you speak of." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's breathing became heavy. According to this, after he killed the system's consciousness in front of him, he would also be irreversibly assimilated by the system, and in the end he would become the next system's consciousness. "Now, do you still want to kill me?" The system's consciousness tilted its head and looked at Leng Shiqi with interest, as if everything was already under its control. However, it didn't wait for Leng Shiqi's answer. What it waited for was a shocking sword light, slashing the physical body and slashing the primordial spirit. Divine night blooming serious. The system's consciousness's expression instantly became flabbergasted. It said so much because it thought that it had grasped Leng Shiqi and was sure that Leng Shiqi wouldn't dare to kill it. However, Leng Shiqi dared to kill it. With the system's current strength, it couldn't resist at all. It hurriedly shouted, "Leng Shiqi, you're crazy. If you kill me you'll be assimilated and sooner or later you'll follow in my footsteps. Let me live and I can tell you how to fight against the system. We can work together to completely kill the system and you can even transcend this world. And I can also be reborn. This is a win-win situation. Why are you so stupid?" Leng Shiqi still didn't answer. There was only a terrifying coldness in his eyes. He could confirm that 80% of what the system consciousness said was true, but he would never allow another consciousness to be hidden in the depths of his soul. Especially when this consciousness was once a peak expert of another world. Who knew how many unimaginable secret techniques this kind of person had? He definitely couldn't be allowed to live. As for the method to deal with the system's consciousness had unintentionally revealed it earlier. That was to use the power of the laws of heaven and earth to stop the assimilation of the system. Leng Shiqi had already touched the edge of the laws of heaven and earth. In this aspect, he had far surpassed the spirit cultivators of the unity of heaven and man realm and the sky origin realm. This was also his biggest advantage against the system. As long as he could comprehend the true laws of heaven and earth as soon as possible and use the system as little as possible, he might be able to strip the system away. The system's consciousness was shattered by Leng Shiqi's slash, and a large amount of black and white light flowed out, which was absorbed by Leng Shiqi. His soul returned to his spiritual space, and the illusion character that had been floating there suddenly bloomed with a strong five-colored brilliance, and finally turned into lines of text. This was the complete ancient technique 5 God flowing light technique. All the words were imprinted into Leng Shiqi's soul. With his current realm, he could cultivate 2 7th-level techniques: 5 God Throne and Dream-Colored Glass. The 5 God Throne could summon an ancient phantom that could intimidate all living things. It was equivalent to a trapping array. Not only could it trap people, it could also suppress a portion of the enemy's strength. The Dream-Colored Glass was an illusion technique, and it was a large area illusion technique. As long as Leng Shiqi was willing to use the full strength of his soul, he could cause an entire city of people to fall into the illusion technique and sleep forever in the dream realm. However, a blood imprint appeared on his soul. This was the blood oath that Leng Shiqi had made when he obtained this technique in the illusory spirit secret realm. He had to rebuild the divine illusion palace in his lifetime, or else the blood oath would break and his soul would be destroyed and he would not be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Leng Shiqi did not care too much about this blood oath. With his current strength and status, it was too easy to establish a force. He just needed to find an opportunity to build the divine illusion palace somewhere. Speaking of this, he immediately thought of Ozu. Since both of them had obtained the inheritance of the divine illusion palace, Ozu should have made a similar blood oath. If there was a chance in the future, he could give Ozu a large amount of resources to build another divine illusion palace. Then Leng Shiqi simply studied the complete 5 God flowing light technique. This technique was an ancient technique. According to the current ranking, it should be between the 8th and 9th level. It was enough to cultivate all the way to the heavenly origin realm. What made Leng Shiqi feel a little strange was that in the past, whenever he broke through a large realm, the system would be upgraded. However, this time there was no such notification. He immediately opened the system and looked at his information. Name: Leng Shiqi Lu Xingji. Cultivation: middle stage of the Unity of Heaven realm. Status: Peak Bloodline, Dark Shadow Clan, Star Clan Management Authority. 100% System Energy, 17% Technique. Rank 8 Technique 10,000 Goose Spirit Devouring Technique. Rank 8 Technique 16 Heaven Transformations. Rank 8 Technique 1000 Illusion Sword Technique. Ancient Technique 5 God Flowing Light Technique. Supreme Technique Heavenly Cycle Star God Technique. Special Technique Wild Demon Blood Beast Body. Spiritual Technique. Rank 7 Spiritual Technique Purple Lightning Punishment. All Rank 7 Spiritual Technique 5 God Throne. Rank 7 Spiritual Technique Glazed Dream. Rank 7 Spiritual Technique Falling Stars. Rank 7 Spiritual Technique Star God Armor System. Coins 2790. He first saw that his cultivation was actually at the middle stage of the Unity of Heaven realm. This made him very surprised. He had clearly just broken through to the Unity of Heaven realm. How did he suddenly jump from the early stage to the middle stage? In fact, the realm of the Unity of Heaven realm was no longer divided into 9 levels like before. Instead, it was roughly divided into the early stage, the middle stage, the late stage, and the peak stage. There was no obvious barrier between these 4 small realms. It was mainly determined by the elemental spiritual energy of heaven and earth that you controlled. As long as you could mobilize enough spiritual energy of heaven and earth, there would naturally be a qualitative change and you would reach the next small realm. When Leng Shiqi broke through, he could already mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles. He had directly reached the middle stage of the Unity of Heaven realm. Of course, this could only be said to be a small surprise for Leng Shiqi. He was most concerned about the 2 information of the system's authority and the system's energy. Now that he had 100% of the system's authority, it meant that he could freely control this mysterious system. The system's energy had also increased to 17%. This progress was equivalent to the progress of his assimilation by the system. If it reached 100%, then he would become the next consciousness of the system. In other words, this was also Leng Shiqi's death sentence. Chapter 719. Leng Shiqi definitely did not want to become the next consciousness of the system. Now he had 2 options. One was to understand the laws of heaven and earth as soon as possible so that he could strip away the system. In the future, he would also have to use the system as little as possible. The source of the system's energy was actually the system currency. As long as Leng Shiqi did not use resources to exchange for system currency, the system's energy would not increase and it would buy him more time. However, the path of cultivation was also a heaven-defying act. The road was rugged and he could not use the system forever. He could only use it as a last resort. Unknowingly, Leng Shiqi felt a lot of pressure in his heart. That pressure forced him not to slack off at all. He had to improve his strength at all times. After making up his mind, Leng Shiqi was still curious about the changes in the system after he had 100% authority. After all, there were some parts of the system that did not require system currency. Perhaps he could use them. He carefully looked at each of the subsidiary systems. First of all, the backpack system no longer had any grid or limit. It could be said that this was a backpack with unlimited space. The system map did not change much because he had already opened all the maps. Now it was more detailed and even the names of the places were written. All the functions of the pet system had been opened. As long as Leng Shiqi was willing to spend the system currency, he could cultivate the Gu King or the four-legged metal-swallowing beast to rank 6 or even rank 7 in a short time. However, when it came to the system currency, Leng Shiqi still decided to think about it again. The changes in the territory system were the least. Even if he had all the system authority, he was still the host. He still had to follow the requirements of the territory system and slowly upgrade the underworld. However, there were also some additional territory functions. For example, he could materialize the territory and place it in a certain place. This way, as long as the members of the underworld were nearby, they could directly teleport in. It was very convenient. There was also the setting of territory authority and so on. Leng Shiqi still had to slowly explore it. As for the shop system, it was the one that had changed the most. Now, the shop no longer had any products on display, nor did it have the ability to refresh. This was because Leng Shiqi could directly use system currency to exchange for any item in any world. As long as you had enough system currency, he could even become a god. Rather than calling it a lottery system, it would be more appropriate to call it the All Heavens Exchange System. While Leng Shiqi was surprised, he also felt that this system was too scary. At the mention of the Lucky Draw system, he opened the Lucky Draw interface. All the Lucky Draw options had been unlocked. There were Top Lottery, Super Lottery, and Divine Lottery. The system coins needed to be spent were 100,000, 1 million, and 10 million respectively. Leng Shiqi sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw this. The first time he had drawn an infinite skill point after obtaining the system, he had drawn an infinite skill point worth tens of millions of system coins. Without unlimited skill points, Leng Shiqi would never have achieved what he did today. Even if he did reach this point sooner or later, it would take a long time. Now that he thought about it, he was really lucky back then. He already had these subsidiary systems. Now that he had all the system permissions, there were different changes. Next, he would have to look at the others. For example, he didn't need to upgrade the system anymore. He could activate all kinds of subsidiary systems at will. Thinking of the equipment system, profession system, talent system, and so on that he had reluctantly abandoned, he could activate them at any time. However, Leng Shiqi didn't choose to activate any of the subsidiary systems after hesitating for a while. What was the purpose of activating the subsidiary systems? It was nothing more than to improve his strength. However, Leng Shiqi now had many ways to improve his strength. For example, he had new spiritual skills for many of the high-level techniques he had. Moreover, he didn't plan to use unlimited skill points for these high-level spiritual skills. He wanted to rely on his own ability to cultivate them. Although the consciousness of the system had been erased by him, the words it said before it died were still imprinted in Leng Shiqi's mind. That was to not rely too much on the system. He had killed the consciousness of the system this time. Next time he might have to face the system directly. If he used the spiritual skills cultivated by the system to fight against the system, he definitely wouldn't be able to win. Cultivating these spiritual skills required time, and fusing them took even more time. In addition, he had just broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm, so he needed to consolidate his cultivation. In this way he would be slowly improving his strength for a long time, so he didn't need to activate the subsidiary systems. Instead of directly obtaining power from the system, it was better to get something more specific. For example, the ability to teleport instantly like the Fate skill was actually more practical than the profession system. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi muttered, "This system, it seems like it's time to hide it." Therefore, he didn't care about the outside world's discussion and continued to cultivate in seclusion. Soon, the news of him breaking through to the unity of heaven and man realm spread. Everyone who heard the news was amazed. They also began to admire Lei Qingjuan's foresight. To be able to go against the objections of the masses and choose such an outstanding chief steward, his foresight was quite unique. Moreover, Leng Shiqi did not disappoint everyone. However, in terms of cultivation progress, no one could surpass him in everyone's memories. Unknowingly, the name Lu Xingji became even more famous. This news naturally spread to the Crown Prince's palace. Lei Haoge, who was dealing with state affairs, immediately became gloomy. During his Crown Prince succession ceremony, he had forcefully forced Leng Shiqi to submit to him. In the end, they parted on bad terms. Lei Haoge let out a message for Leng Shiqi to go back and think about it. However, who would have thought that Leng Shiqi didn't take his words seriously and went into seclusion after returning? This seclusion lasted for half a year. This made Lei Haoge angry, but he couldn't just charge into the Dark Thunder Guards and make things difficult for the 4 chief stewards. He only wanted to wait for him to ascend the throne and completely take over the Dark Thunder Guards before dealing with Leng Shiqi. At this time he received news that Leng Shiqi had broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm. While he was shocked and angry, his heart couldn't help but thump. Lei Haoge's cultivation talent wasn't very good, but he still had the basic knowledge of cultivation. In Shantai Prefecture he clearly remembered that Leng Shiqi was only at the Spirit Aperture realm. In just 2 years he had reached the unity of heaven and man realm. Lei Haoge had never heard of such a monstrous cultivation speed. The more outstanding Leng Shiqi was, the more people would chase after him and the more the upper echelons of the Thunderfire dynasty would value him. If Lei Haoge wanted to touch him again, it would be extremely difficult. Lei Haoge sat there, his expression fluctuating. After a while, a cold ruthlessness flashed through his eyes as he said, "Hidei, go invite Chief Steward Hai and Chief Steward Shintu of the Dark Thunder Guards. Remember, don't let anyone find out." Chapter 720. While Leng Shiqi continued his seclusion, Xingji Pavilion encountered quite a bit of trouble. On this day, Deputy Manager Ren Yi was dealing with the large and small affairs of Xingji Pavilion when several other deputy managers and eunuchs hurriedly walked in with dissatisfaction on their faces. Seeing this, Ren Yi knew that something had happened and asked, "What happened?" He Feichen replied, "Rendarin, not long ago many of our brothers were sent back when they went to pick up missions. They said that the rules are different from before, but when we asked they couldn't give us a reason. In short, they didn't give us any missions. Even the 2 deputy managers couldn't do it. They said that only Lu Darin could do it." Ren Yi was an old man who had been in the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters for several decades. From He Feichen's short words he could tell that someone was clearly targeting them. The news of Leng Shiqi breaking through to unity of heaven and man realm had already spread. Generally speaking, after breaking through to this realm, it would take at least a year or so to consolidate, or else it would lead to an unstable foundation and affect one's future cultivation. Therefore, Leng Shiqi definitely couldn't come out of seclusion at this time. Others naturally knew this and wanted to use this time to cause trouble. And the only people who could target the 4 managers could only be the 4 managers. Ren Yi concluded that it was either Manager Hai or Manager Shintu who was secretly making a move. Ren Yi muttered, "Is the Great Commander at headquarters? The Great Commander has always appeared and disappeared unpredictably. We don't know his whereabouts, so it's almost impossible to find the Great Commander." He Feichen shook his head. Then what about Manager Gao? Eunuch Gao was Leng Shiqi's Shurzuan. They were all the 4 managers, so needless to say they had to be on the same boat. Now that they couldn't find the Great Commander, they could only ask Eunuch Gao for help. However, He Feichen suddenly sighed. News came from the palace yesterday. The humble prince ordered all the servants who had served the previous emperor to go to the imperial mausoleum to observe mourning for the previous emperor for 3 years. Eunuch Gao has already gone. Not good. Ren Yi realized that the situation wasn't good. The Grand Commander was not here, Eunuch Gao was ordered to observe the mourning period, and then there were people who made things difficult for Xingji court. All of these seemed to be driven by a mastermind. Just Manager Hai or Manager Shintu alone would definitely not be able to do this. The identity of the mastermind behind the scenes would only be higher. Missions were the foundation of the Dark Thunder Guards. Only by continuously completing missions would one be able to obtain large amounts of resources and merit points, and thus have a path to promotion. In the Dark Thunder Guards, except for those who were too old to be beaten, there were very few passive people. If they didn't have any missions, they couldn't just stay in Xingji Pavilion forever. In the long run, their Xingji Pavilion's reputation would be ruined. This matter was neither big nor small. In short, it was very difficult to deal with. Ren Yi rubbed the space between his eyebrows, feeling a headache coming on. Let's not alarm Lord Lu for now. Let the brothers finish the tasks at hand first. If there's nothing left, go into seclusion or spar. We can't be idle. Yes. He Feichen lowered his head and said, "But this is only a temporary measure. I'm worried that the other side will have follow-up plans. After all, it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. We can't just sit here and wait for death." "How could I not know what you're saying?" Relax, although us old fellows aren't as strong as before, the connections we've accumulated over the years are not few. I'll use other channels to find out who is targeting us. If there's no other way, I'll take on some private work so that Xingji Pavilion won't be wasted. Renyi already had a plan in his mind. He turned to the other 3 vice managers and said, "You must restrain your subordinates for now. Don't cause trouble and don't easily get into conflict with others. As long as Lord Lu comes out of seclusion, everything will be solved." Everyone agreed with Renyi's suggestion. Not letting them take on missions was only the first step against them. There would be more following, so it wasn't a big deal for them to endure it. When their lord comes out of seclusion, all problems would no longer exist. Actually, they didn't know when it started, but they already had this much confidence in Leng Shiqi. After discussing the countermeasures, everyone dispersed. Sure enough, something happened a few days later. An ordinary war thunder guard in Xingji Pavilion was found to have abused his power for personal gain, embezzled huge sums of money, and was caught with the stolen goods. Without informing Renyi, he was directly sent to prison. At the same time, many negative news about Xingji Pavilion spread rapidly, saying that they didn't want to make progress, were corrupt, and relied on the name of Leng Shiqi to be even more arrogant and domineering, and didn't put anyone in their eyes. There were also people who stood up and said that Leng Shiqi didn't kill Thousand Illusion Sword Elder at all, and that it was all deliberate. For a time, the reputation of Dark Thunder Guard Xingji Pavilion in the imperial capital was extremely bad. Not only that, but there would always be some bad things happening every once in a while. The most serious thing was that several subordinates under Manager Hai and Manager Shinto went to the 4 counties under Leng Shiqi's supervision. And their purpose was to seize power. This was equivalent to breaking the roots of Leng Shiqi. However, Leng Shiqi's strongest subordinates were all concentrated in the imperial capital, and only Pinghui Prefecture had Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei in charge. Unfortunately, the other 3 counties were not so optimistic. In the case where Leng Shiqi couldn't appear, his supervision power was in jeopardy. During this time, Renyi was so busy that he seemed to have lost a lot of hair. At first, he thought it was a general manager who was making a move, but in the end, it was Manager Hai and Manager Shinto who were targeting them at the same time. Leng Shiqi was in seclusion, the commander was not here, and Eunuch Gao also went to the Imperial Mausoleum. Who could stop the 2 general managers from joining forces? At this time, all the deputy managers and internal supervisors of Xingji Pavilion gathered in the meeting hall to discuss what to do. Renyi said with a bitter face, "Manager Hai and Manager Shinto are pressuring us step by step. If we are really robbed of the right to supervise a few provinces and counties, then Xingji Pavilion will lose its foundation. What should we do? They're going overboard. Aren't they afraid that the commander will blame them if he finds out? Sai, if the matter is settled, the commander will at most blame them. What can he do to them? Then we can't sit still and wait for death. Otherwise, I will personally go down and definitely not give up the supervision power," one of the deputy managers said. No. Renyi rejected. "As a deputy manager, if you personally seize power, then the headquarters will lose a lot of power. I'm afraid there will be even more chaos. If it really doesn't work, we can only ask Sir Lu to come out of seclusion. As long as Sir appears, at least the current situation can be stabilized. It still won't work. Sir has just broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm. If he doesn't consolidate his cultivation, it will affect his life. This won't work, that won't work. Are we just going to wait for power to be seized? At that time, even if Sir Lu comes out of seclusion, only an empty shell of Xingji Pavilion will be left." Everyone instantly fell silent, because they really didn't have any good ideas. They could only watch as they slowly died like a frog being boiled in warm water. Just as everyone was feeling anxious, a voice suddenly came in. "To make you all so anxious, what happened in Xingji Pavilion?" When everyone heard this voice, they were slightly stunned at first. But immediately they were pleasantly surprised. They turned their heads at the same time and saw a young man wearing a black and red official robe standing in front of the door of the meeting hall. It was Leng Shiqi. Chapter 721. Sir. You've finally come out. Greetings, sir. When everyone saw Leng Shiqi, it was as if they had seen their savior. They were all ecstatic. Even the weakest among them was an eunuch. However, they had been targeted and troubled for the past few months. Now, Leng Shiqi's appearance had finally given them their greatest hope. Leng Shiqi smiled and sat in the empty seat in the center. He gestured for everyone to sit down. After sitting down, for some reason, everyone suddenly had a backbone. they were no longer as anxious as before. They keenly discovered that the reason was that Leng Shiqi exuded an indescribable aura. It seemed to be confidence, steadiness, and a little calmness. Even if something big happened, it was nothing in front of him. It was this kind of temperament that allowed everyone to calm down. In fact, it was indeed so. Leng Shiqi had a self-confidence that came from inside out. This confidence was not because he was arrogant but because of his strength. It had been more than 3 months since he had broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm. These days he had been cultivating spiritual techniques and comprehending the laws of heaven and earth. Unexpectedly, the process was unusually smooth, especially when he cultivated the heavenly cycle star god technique, the 5-god flowing light technique, and the 1000 illusion sword codex. It was as easy as water flowing through a canal. His comprehension was very high. Cultivating the spiritual techniques that were most suitable for him was really twice the result with half the effort. Now that he had succeeded in cultivating his spiritual technique, he had naturally merged it with his other spiritual techniques. Unfortunately, he had always been deducing it in his spiritual sea and had never really fought with anyone. He still didn't know exactly how powerful it was. In addition, he also had some understanding of the earth element, the 4 elements, and the power of yin and yang. Compared to spiritual techniques, these powers that involved the laws of heaven and earth were the strongest. Therefore, even Leng Shiqi himself didn't know how strong he was now. However, he believed that if he unleashed his full strength, it would be easy for him to kill a late-stage unity of heaven realm expert. His current combat strength was definitely comparable to a peak-stage unity of heaven realm expert, or even higher. It could also be said that cultivators below the sky origin stage were no longer a threat to the Leng Shiqi. For example, Li Juning, who had almost killed him in the past, if they were to fight again, Leng Shiqi could kill him in an instant. Leng Shiqi was full of confidence because of this powerful strength. He pacified everyone and said calmly, "Tell me what happened while I was in seclusion?" Ren Yi immediately summarized everything in the shortest and most concise manner. "My lord, it's like this. Right now, other than Pinghui Prefecture, Tianshan Prefecture and the other 2 prefectures are in imminent danger." However, Leng Shiqi did not care about this. Instead, he asked, "You said that Manager Hai and Manager Shen to work together to seize my supervision authority?" "That's right. If my lord came out of seclusion a few months later, I'm afraid all the supervision authority would be gone." Who would have thought that Leng Shiqi would shake his head? That's not the case. You may not know this, but the Grand Commander has already ordered that internal strife between the 4 great stewards is forbidden during the year before the new emperor ascends the throne. Thus, the people behind the scenes might not be them. Moreover, I was in seclusion, and Master only went to the imperial tomb to observe mourning. We are not dead, so Manager Hai and the others did not need to be in such a hurry to seize power. Whether it was the Great Commander appearing, me coming out of seclusion, or Master returning, their actions of seizing power did not have much meaning. Perhaps you were under too much pressure and did not think of this. Ren Yi and the others immediately understood. Yes. My lord means that there is someone behind Manager Hai and Manager Shen too. That's right. Actually, I have already guessed who that person is. Leng Shiqi said leisurely. Who is it? Everyone asked at the same time. Leng Shiqi made a shushing gesture. I can't say. However, since I have already come out of seclusion early, you don't have to worry about this. Go and tell all the brothers that Xingji Pavilion will be back to normal in a few days. You have all been working hard these days. Have a good rest. This? Ren Yi and the others still hesitated. Even if Leng Shiqi came out of seclusion, in the face of such a serious predicament, he could not easily solve it with his own strength, right? However, since Leng Shiqi had already spoken, they could only do as he said. To be honest, they had been too tired these days. Even if their cultivations were high, they still felt physically and mentally exhausted. Then we will take our leave. Everyone left the meeting hall one by one. Right, my lord, you came out of seclusion early. Did you have any problems with your cultivation? Ren Yi asked before leaving. Leng Shiqi smiled gently. It's fine. There were 2 reasons why he came out of seclusion early. The first was that Lei Haoge's ascension ceremony was about to arrive. As one of the 4 chiefs, he had to attend. The second reason was that Delta Origi had told him roughly what had happened in Xingji Pavilion through the Netherlamp illusion. He naturally could not watch as he lost the right to supervise, so he came out of seclusion early. Fortunately, his cultivation base was very deep. His realm of unity of heaven and man was already very stable. Moreover, his cultivation of spiritual techniques had almost reached the point of saturation. As for the comprehension of the laws of heaven and earth, that was not something that could be done overnight. He could not rush it. When everyone left, Leng Shiqi's eyes revealed an undisguised murderous intent. He knew best who was playing tricks behind the scenes. In the imperial capital, the only one who had a grudge against him was Lei Haoge. If it was not him, who else could it be? However, Leng Shiqi did not expect Lei Haoge to have such great ability to persuade Manager Hai and Manager Shinto to work together against Xingji Pavilion. Of these two, one was very experienced while the other had a military background. He did not know what benefits Lei Haoge had promised to persuade them. Furthermore, Eunuch Gao had been temporarily ordered to observe mourning for 3 years in the imperial mausoleum. It could be seen that this was also arranged by Lei Haoge. It seemed that he was not that useless. It was a pity that Lei Haoge had used his rare shrewdness to deal with Leng Shiqi. He did not know that he had brought a fatal disaster upon himself. That's right. Leng Shiqi had already decided to kill the crown prince, Lei Haoge, the future emperor of the Thunderfire dynasty. If others do not offend me, I will not offend them. If others offend me, I will kill them. In any case, Lei Haoge had not ascended the throne yet and did not have many experts protecting him. As for whether his death would affect the Thunderfire dynasty, that was not something Leng Shiqi needed to consider. The only thing that puzzled Leng Shiqi was that Manager Hai and Manager Shinto should have known that what they were doing did not have much meaning. Why did they still do it? I underestimated him, but it doesn't matter. There is no need to feel sorry for a dead person, Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, then disappeared from the meeting hall. Chapter 722. In the Crown Prince's residence, Hidei was standing in front of Lei Haoge and talking about Xingji Pavilion. Your Highness, the authority to supervise Tianshan County is about to be taken away by Supervisor Hai. It won't be long before Lu Xingji becomes a loner. Lei Haoge was full of joy as he said disdainfully, a mere Lu Xingji dares to be impudent in front of me. He should know how powerful I am and the importance of power. As long as Ben Gong is willing, even Manager Hai and Manager Shinto would have to be docile and obedient, let alone a useless manager like him. That's true. The young eunuch serving tea beside him flattered, Your Highness the Crown Prince is immeasurably virtuous. All the lands in the world belong to you. What for supervisors? When Your Highness becomes the Emperor, won't their lives be in your hands? Ah, well said, well said. Lei Haoge immediately laughed wildly. Hidei frowned secretly. It had been more than 10 months since Lei Haoge became the Crown Prince. There was not much time left until the 1-year deadline. Seeing that he was about to become the emperor and that there were many people sucking up to him, Lei Haoge became complacent. In particular, the series of events against Leng Shiqi were all secretly pushed by Lei Haoge. Everything was going as he expected, making him feel like the world was under his control. However, Hidei was not happy at all, because he had noticed that Lei Haoge was changing just as Leng Shiqi had said. He had become arrogant, narrow-minded, and even suspicious. Even Hidei, an old man who had followed Lei Haoge for many years, did not trust him as much as before. For half a year, Lei Haoge wanted to achieve something, but he also listened to the slanderous words of others and fiddled around. Not only did he not make any contributions, but he also made the imperial capital a mess and caused a lot of trouble. However, more people benefited from this, so there was not much negative news about him that reached the humble prince's ears. However, Hidei always wondered what Lei Haoge would become when he really ascended to the throne. Would the Thunderfire dynasty really be fine in his hands? Hidei even thought that it would be better to let the clumsy prince take the reins and let Lei Haoge be a puppet emperor. While Hidei was thinking this worriedly, Lei Haoge was chatting happily with the young eunuch. After a long while he finally said, "Oh Hidei, you're still here. Go back to your work." This servant obeys. Hidei bowed his head, but his heart felt even more depressed. Then Lei Haoge clapped his hands and 2 rows of well-dressed young girls swam out of the room. They were all purple and had beautiful figures. The young eunuch yelled, "Start the dance and play the music." Hidei, who had just walked away, paused for 2 breaths. In the end he sighed and continued walking. He had told Lei Haoge many times that he should not indulge in wine, women, and dancing all day long. If the humble king knew about it, it might affect his position as the emperor. At first, Lei Haoge still listened to him, but now he was just putting on an act. Hidei shook his head as he walked. He thought back to when he was in Shantai County. Lei Haoge was not very smart, but at least he was very motivated. His cultivation talent was not good, but he did not stop cultivating every day. He was not shrewd enough, so he used his sincerity to rope in forces. However, the current Lei Haoge was like a different person. Hidei did not dare to recognize him. Inside the room, Lei Haoge was enjoying the service and singing of the maids with an intoxicated expression. However, all of a sudden, an invisible and strange force pressed down from all directions. The terrifying pressure instantly caused all the dancers to explode into clouds of blood mist. Before Lei Haoge could react, a dazzling golden light suddenly lit up in front of his chest. It condensed into a golden dragon the size of a human to protect him. However, this golden dragon only lasted for an instant before it was crushed. However, it was at this moment that a total of 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm descended from the sky. Assassins! Protect the crown prince. Quick! The 10 experts were the bodyguards responsible for protecting Lei Haoge. They usually did not reveal themselves, but in fact they were all hiding to protect him in the dark. After all, Lei Haoge was the future emperor. How could he not have a true expert protecting him? These 10 people successively used their methods to protect Lei Haoge. However, what shocked them was that they could not communicate with the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth at this moment. As an expert of the unity of heaven and man realm, what they were most proud of was using the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth. However, there was no elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles. It was as if the heaven and earth had been isolated. But how was this possible? While everyone was in shock, they saw a black ball the size of a thumb appear in the middle of them. Suddenly, heaven and earth twisted and distorted the void. Everything in the room was constantly being pulled and twisted. Finally, they were sucked into the small black ball. Including everything, including the 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm, including Lei Haoge. In the end, not even a drop of blood was left. Hidei, who had just walked not far, suddenly felt a feeling that made his heart palpitate. He also heard the shouting. When he hurriedly turned around, he saw Lei Haoge and all the other experts of the unity of heaven and man realm being twisted into pieces. Boom. Hidei's brain seemed to be thrown into a bomb, which made him almost lose consciousness in an instant. His master, the current crown prince, Lei Haoge, who would ascend the throne and become the emperor in a month, was dead. Under the protection of 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm, he died in the blink of an eye. Hidei was frightened and horrified at the same time. He felt even more incredible. He himself was at the late stage of Gang Spirit realm and was also preparing to break through the unity of heaven and man realm. Therefore he had also touched the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth. However, he did not even notice the fluctuation of the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth just now. However, he saw the tragic death of Lei Haoge and all the other experts with his own eyes. This meant that the 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm were killed before they could make a move. What was more terrible was that Hidei did not even feel the fluctuation of the spiritual power. What kind of realm could kill so many experts of the unity of heaven and man realm without using any spiritual power? He was afraid that Tianyuan realm might not be able to do it. The most important thing was that Lei Haoge was dead. The crown prince was killed in the crown prince mansion. This was simply a big joke. Although Hidei was very disappointed with Lei Haoge, he still treated Lei Haoge as his own child in his heart. He witnessed the tragic death of Lei Haoge and suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. The huge mental impact made Hidei gasp violently for a few times. His eyes were gray and full of despair. At this time, a large number of spirit cultivators rushed over, among which there were many experts. However, when they ran over, they only saw an empty area and Hidei, who was lying on the ground and lost his soul. These people were very confused. Where was the crown prince? Chapter 723. Eunuch, we heard there was an assassin. Where is the crown prince? There is no trace of the assassin. Where is the crown prince's palace? They were all confused. Even if there was an assassin, he couldn't have killed the crown prince without making a sound. Besides, they didn't sense any spiritual power fluctuation. That meant there was no fight. Where did the crown prince go? How did his palace disappear? Hidei was so anxious that he spat out a mouthful of blood. He said weakly, the crown prince was assassinated. He was assassinated. Hearing that, the others were stunned. They couldn't believe it. They looked at each other and felt that Hidei was joking. Where was this place? It was the royal capital of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It was the crown prince's palace. Not to mention the guards, the crown prince must have more powerful guards around him. Even a Sky Origin Stage cultivator would not be able to kill the Crown Prince quietly. Even a Sky Origin Stage cultivator wouldn't have much hope. There were many Sky Origin Stage cultivators in the royal capital. If a Sky Origin Stage cultivator came to assassinate the Crown Prince, he wouldn't be able to get away. That was why they all believed the Crown Prince was assassinated. However, the Crown Prince and his palace had disappeared. That meant things weren't as simple as they seemed. Just as everyone was in a daze, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the sky above everyone. It was a Sky Origin Stage cultivator. The appearance of these 3 people made everyone realize that the situation seemed to be really serious. Not only that, but there were also 8 or 9 figures standing in the void in succession. Each of them had a grave expression on their faces. The guards were all stunned. They couldn't believe they saw over a dozen Sky Origin Stage cultivators at the same time. Normally, they wouldn't see so many powerful cultivators in their entire lives. It was a feast for their eyes. However, there were so many Sky Origin Stage cultivators in the Crown Prince's palace. Something big must have happened. Did something happen to the Crown Prince? If that was the case, all of them standing here would not be able to escape punishment. They might even be dragged away to be beheaded. The Sky Origin Stage cultivators in the sky didn't care about them. Some of them closed their eyes as if they were sensing something. Some of them frowned. Some of them looked gloomy. One of them said, "You all felt it, right? It is indeed the power of the laws of heaven and earth, the power of the laws of earth. It seems to be the law of gravity. What a desirable power." I didn't expect a Tongxin realm expert to personally come to the imperial capital. The Tongxin stage was a stage above the Tianyuan stage. Such experts were rare in the world. Every single one of them was an expert who could control the laws of heaven and earth. Their words were law, and they could move mountains and overturn seas with a single thought. That's strange. That person from Dynasty wasn't alarmed at all. It's clear that the person who attacked is on par with that person. What's even stranger is why he attacked Lei Haoge. He's just a useless ruler. That's true. There's something strange about this. It's just the death of a crown prince. The important thing is to find out who did it. It doesn't matter if Lei Haoge dies or not. We can't lose face. That person can't have gone far. I suggest that we activate the Great Thunder Flame formation. Even if he's a Tongxin realm martial artist, he has to stay in the imperial capital. This is not something we can decide. While these Tianyuan realm experts were talking, a man in a golden robe arrived. He was the clumsy ruler. He looked at the empty crown prince residence and had an ominous premonition. He asked, "I was in the dragon vein preparing for Lei Haoge's ascension. What happened just now? Where is the crown prince?" "He's dead," a Tianyuan realm expert said calmly. He sounded like a stray dog that had died on the street. The clumsy ruler's eyes suddenly turned golden. He glanced around the crown prince residence and said, "There's the aura of the law of heaven and earth. Could it be a Tongxin realm expert?" A Tongxin realm expert appeared in the imperial capital and killed Lei Haoge. This was a great threat to the Thunderblaze dynasty. If this Tongxin realm expert was crazy enough to attack the imperial capital, the entire imperial capital would be destroyed. However, the clumsy ruler couldn't figure it out. There were detection arrays set up around the imperial capital. Any aura of a Tianyuan realm expert or above would be detected. Even if the arrays were evaded, there were still Tongxin realm experts from the Thunderblaze dynasty hiding in the imperial capital. If it was really a Tongxin realm expert, it was impossible for them not to be detected. What the hell is going on? Your Highness, should we activate the heaven-destroying Thunderblaze formation? Don't act rashly. If we push that guy too far, even if we kill him, the imperial capital will suffer a great loss. Let me go and ask Master Qiao to come out first. Now, you guys are all scattered around the imperial capital. We can't let anything happen to you, the clumsy ruler said. We understand. What they said was blocked, so the people below couldn't hear them. The dozen Tianyuan realm experts flashed and disappeared. The clumsy ruler looked at the people below and asked, "Has the crown prince made any enemies recently?" The people looked at each other. They all knew Lei Haoge had caused a lot of trouble and some people must be dissatisfied with him. However, they wouldn't go so far as to assassinate the crown prince. Therefore no one said anything. The clumsy ruler suddenly snorted. It was as if the power of heaven had descended. Under the gaze of his golden eyes, everyone felt chills down their spines. They were all frightened. "Your Highness, I only know that the crown prince doesn't get along well with some generals. I heard that the Crown Prince has some conflicts with the Heavenly Treasure Chamber of Commerce. The Crown Prince has been picking on Steward Liu of the Dark Thunder Guards. The Crown Prince has asked for a lot of dancers in the past 2 months. They are all top prostitutes in the brothels. That is why he is in trouble. The more they talked, the more excited they became. It seemed this was a good chance for them to atone for their sins. They told the people about all the ugly things Lei Haoge had done recently. The clumsy ruler's face turned darker and darker. He didn't know Lei Haoge had done so many stupid things. He had offended all the powerful forces and noble families in the imperial capital. Although it wasn't a big deal, it was enough to show how arrogant Lei Haoge was in private. Was such a man really fit to be the crown prince? Even if Lei Haoge didn't die today, the clumsy ruler would have to reconsider. In the end, the clumsy ruler waved his sleeve and gave an order: "You all go to the heavenly prison to receive your punishment. If you don't obey, all your relatives will be killed." After that, he disappeared, leaving the people behind with gloomy faces. Leng Shiqi, who had assassinated Lei Haoge and was mistaken as a Tongxian realm cultivator, had already returned to the Xingji pavilion. He was holding his chest in pain. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. With my current cultivation, it is indeed a bit difficult for me to use the law of gravity. Chapter 724. Leng Shiqi had killed Lei Haoge and 10 oneness of heaven and man experts within 2 breaths. He had not used any spiritual technique, but the power of the laws of heaven and earth. To be more precise, it was the law of gravity. His greatest gain during this period of seclusion was not breaking through to the oneness of heaven and man realm, nor was it cultivating more level 7 spiritual techniques. It was that he had a preliminary grasp of the law of gravity and the law of earth. The law of gravity contained gravity and anti-gravity. Leng Shiqi had used the extreme anti-gravity technique to kill Lei Haoge and the others, the black hole space. In terms of the law of earth, he had comprehended the Qiankuan earth traversal technique, which allowed him to travel 100 miles in an instant. It was a secret technique that was above all movement techniques. However, Leng Shiqi had only just begun to comprehend it. Moreover, with his current cultivation, he could not activate too much of the power of the laws of heaven and earth. Otherwise, he would suffer a certain backlash. Not long ago, when he assassinated Lei Haoge, he could only force himself to his limit in order to not leave anyone alive, which caused him to suffer some internal injuries. However, Leng Shiqi was even more aware of his current strength. The 10 oneness of heaven and man experts were all in the middle and late stages of the oneness of heaven and man realm. With this kind of strength, it would be easy for them to destroy a first-rate sect. They could even threaten the top sections. However, such a powerful force had been killed by Leng Shiqi in one move. It could be said that Leng Shiqi's current limit of strength was close to that of a sky origin expert. Leng Shiqi looked at his palm, then clenched it tightly. The feeling of holding a powerful force fascinated him. Today he had also clearly felt the benefits of strength. If he was just an ordinary oneness of heaven and man realm, there was nothing he could do against Lei Haoge's suppression. He could either bow and submit to him, or wait for him to take revenge after he ascended the throne. Either way, it was extremely disadvantageous for Leng Shiqi. Now that he had used his strength to directly kill Lei Haoge, the mastermind behind the scenes, all the difficulties would naturally be solved. Even though Leng Shiqi could not guess why Manager Hai and Manager Shintu were persuaded by Lei Haoge, it was most likely because Lei Haoge had promised them various benefits after ascending the throne. But now that Lei Haoge was dead, who was going to give them benefits? As such, Manager Hai and Manager Shintu would have to reconsider if they wanted to continue targeting Leng Shiqi. As the intelligence agency of the Thunderfire dynasty, the Dark Lightning Guards were the first to receive news of Lei Haoge's death. Everyone who heard about it was so shocked that their jaws dropped. The Crown Prince was killed in the Crown Prince's residence. This was too absurd and too crazy. When Manager Hai and Manager Shintu found out about this, they were also in disbelief. Then they quickly met up. Manager Hai said with a worried expression, "Shintu, Lei Haoge is dead. What should we do?" Shintu Zhen clasped his hands in front of his chest and said without turning his head, "Lu Xingji's troubles are not small now. Let's see how he cleans up the mess." Alas. General Manager Hai sighed. The Grand Commander wants to nurture Lu Xingji, but he wants us to be the bad guys. Originally, we only wanted to use Lei Haoge's identity and power to suppress Lu Xingji. If Lu Xingji came out of seclusion, he would be able to guess that Lei Haoge was the one who ordered us to do this. Even if he wanted to retaliate, he would find trouble with Lei Haoge. Now that Lei Haoge is dead with Lu Xingji's temper, he will definitely use forceful methods to take revenge on us. Lu Xingji's breakthrough to the unity of heaven and man realm caused quite a commotion. I estimate that he is at least at the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. In the Dark Lightning Guards, other than you and me, there aren't many who can suppress him. Shintuzhen also felt that it was a little troublesome. However, they were not too concerned about Lei Haoge's death. Logically speaking, the Crown Prince's death was a huge matter. However, in their hearts and the eyes of the Sky Yuan experts, it did not seem to be a big deal. In fact, not having a Crown Prince, or rather, not having an Emperor, was the best outcome for them. The Dark Lightning Guards were currently in a situation where no one was in charge. The Grand Commander was also not often in the Imperial capital. Manager Hai and the other managers could be said to be extremely powerful. Lei Haoge's death had indeed shocked them. However, they were even more surprised than shocked. Furthermore, the Emperor botched governance did not order them to investigate the Crown Prince's assassin. Since that was the case, they naturally did not care about the matter and just let it go. The Emperor botched governance did not order the Dark Lightning Guards to interfere because he thought the assassin was a Tongxian expert. The Dark Lightning Guard's highest cultivation level was Heavenly Venerable He Yen. However, even he did not have the qualifications to investigate a Tongxian expert. If they really used the Dark Lightning Guards, it would cause too much of a commotion and alert the enemy. While the two of them were talking, an extremely crazy idea suddenly appeared in Manager Hai's mind. He thought to himself, could Lei Haoge have been killed by Lu Xingji? However, he immediately discarded this unrealistic idea. He did not even say it out loud. He knew that if he said it out loud, Shintuzhen would only laugh at him. His Highness the Crown Prince is dead, yet the two managers are still so safe. It is truly admirable. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's voice came from outside. Manager Hai and Manager Shinta looked at each other. He came so fast. In their minds, Leng Shiqi should still be in closed-door training at this time. Leng Shiqi pushed the door open and entered without hesitation. However, the Dark Lightning Guards guarding the door stood there motionless like wooden chickens. Manager Hai and Manager Shinta were slightly shocked. At a glance, they could see that the guards at the door had fallen into the illusion. However, those guards were all experts of Gang Spirit Realm. They did not even have time to react before they fell into the illusion. It could be seen that Leng Shiqi's attainments in illusion were extremely high now. At the same time, they also understood that Leng Shiqi came here today to demonstrate his power. Shintuzhen sneered in his heart, I want to see how much power you can play. Before the two of them had time to speak, Leng Shiqi raised one hand high and opened his 5 fingers. The sky suddenly changed and the spiritual power of heaven and earth became extremely violent. In an instant, 5 divine shadows of hundreds of feet high descended. The divine power descended and suppressed the mortal world. 5 divine throne. Under the pressure of the divine power, Manager Hai and Manager Shinta felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Manager Hai formed a seal with both hands, and the green light around him rushed into the sky. The shadow of a green bird appeared behind him. Endless primordial spirit power surged out. There was a strange rhythm that made Leng Shiqi's 5 divine thrones shake. Shintuzhen roared to the sky like a divine beast. He punched out, and the terrifying fist power shook the void as if it was the end of the world. He shattered 3 divine shadows with one punch. The two of them almost broke Leng Shiqi's 5 divine throne when they joined forces. However, Leng Shiqi did not attack again. Instead, he stood quietly in place because he had achieved his goal. Manager Hai and Shintuzhen both looked deeply at Leng Shiqi. A person who had just broken through had directly skipped the initial stage and reached the middle stage of unity of heaven and man realm. That was not all. The power that Leng Shiqi erupted was already close to Manager Hai's level. He had to go all out to resist it. What kind of terrifying power was this? What was even more terrifying was how long Leng Shiqi had been cultivating for. Manager Hai remembered clearly that when Leng Shiqi had just arrived at the imperial capital, he had made a bet with Eunuch Gao. In the end, he had lost to one of Eunuch Gao's guards. At that time, Leng Shiqi was only at the spirit aperture realm. In a short 2 years, the person in front of him had already gained the qualifications to speak with them as equals. Manager Hai flipped his hand, and a stone chair rose from the ground. Chapter 725. Leng Shiqi smiled lightly. He knew that he finally had the qualifications to speak directly to the 4 directors. He sat down on the stone chair. There was nowhere else to sit because everything around him had been destroyed by the aftermath of their fight. After Leng Shiqi sat down, he went straight to the point. Director Shintu, as soon as I came out of seclusion, I found that the Xingji Pavilion has caused quite a bit of trouble. Even the 4 provinces under my command are in turmoil. Do the 2 directors not need to explain? If Leng Shiqi dared to say such things in front of them in the past, he would at least be seriously injured. However, it was different now. Director Hai stroked his long beard and looked amiable. I'm sure Director Liu has already guessed the person who really wants to deal with you. The 2 of us are only following orders. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards are still the Dark Thunder Guards of the Imperial Court. He pushed all the blame onto Lei Haoge with one sentence. After all, he was speaking the truth. Shintu even nodded his head in a serious manner. Pushing all the blame onto a dead person. Do you think I can go to the underworld to settle the score with Lei Haoge? The 2 of you, my Xingji Pavilion is very chaotic right now. I came here today for no other reason than to demand an explanation. As Leng Shiqi spoke, a glass-like spiritual sword appeared in his hand. The moment this sword appeared, it caused the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to vibrate. Leng Shiqi sat on the stone chair, but he felt like he was one with heaven and earth. Level 8 Earth Weapon, 1000 Illusion Dao Sword. Shock flashed through the eyes of Director Hai and Shintu. Even they did not have a level 8 Earth Weapon. This was something they yearned for even in their dreams. Just now they had experienced Leng Shiqi's current strength. He was definitely not weaker than them. Adding the 1000 Illusion Dao Sword, he had even slightly surpassed them. They smiled bitterly in their hearts. Actually, they had thought of suppressing Leng Shiqi in the past. Because once Leng Shiqi grew up and joined forces with Eunuch Gao, they would have half of the Dark Thunder Guard's authority. This was not a good thing for them. However, after Lei Qingjuan's death, they knew that the Grand Commander would not allow them to fight among themselves. When Leng Shiqi went into seclusion to break through, they gradually gave up on this idea. In truth, all of this had been arranged by Grand Commander Heavenly Venerable Black Flame. Celestial Lord He Yen knew that Leng Shiqi had great potential, but he was afraid that if his mentality and strength were not equal, he would become arrogant and condescending. That kind of person was only suitable to be a general who charged and broke through enemy lines, not a commander. Thus, when Heavenly Sage He Yen learned that Leng Shiqi had a grudge with Lei Haoge, he planned to use this matter to temper Leng Shiqi's state of mind. But no one expected that Lei Haoge would suddenly die, and Leng Shiqi's strength would become so terrifying. Now, other than Empyrean Black Flame personally taking action, it was likely that no one could suppress him. Thus, Manager Hai and Shintu were in a difficult position. Of course, they were not afraid of Leng Shiqi. If they continued to cause trouble, it would only get worse, and in the end it would be difficult to resolve. However, it was impossible for them to lower their heads like this. Otherwise, where would they put their faces? Manager Hai's eyes flashed as he said, "Manager Gao is not here, and you still dare to act like this?" "Manager Hai, I have lived until now and have never relied on anyone. I only believe in one thing, and that is that strength is respected." Leng Shiqi stroked the blade of the 1000 Illusion Dao Sword, and the blade immediately hummed. Then there seemed to be a sword hum in the sky. Seeing that Leng Shiqi was still so strong, Shintu heart burned with anger. "Young man, we acknowledge your strength, but in this world, strength is not everything. Especially in a faction, you need to know how to network. Otherwise, sooner or later, you will not have a good ending." Leng Shiqi did not care about the hidden threat in Shintu words. "Perhaps. If the 2 of you do not have an explanation today, I would like to test how strong I am." He really had some fighting spirit. Experts like Manager Hai and Shintu were not comparable to other Unity of Heaven realms. They could be said to be between Unity of Heaven and Man and Heavenly Origin realms. Fighting with such experts was truly satisfying. The 3 of them fell silent. The atmosphere had already frozen to a freezing point, and the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was secretly surging. Now all that was needed was a fuse and they would really fight. Enough. Suddenly, a ball of black flames appeared above the 3 of them. Soon after, the black flames dissipated, revealing Empyrean Black Flame's face. "Greetings, Grand Commander." The 3 of them stood up and said at the same time. Empyrean Black Flame looked at Leng Shiqi a few more times before saying, "The 3 of you Grand Managers are at daggers drawn here. What are you doing?" "Lu Xingji, I already know about the Xingji Pavilion. Shintu, the 2 of you will each give Lu Xingji the authority to supervise a prefecture. Right and wrong will be written off. If anyone still wants to scheme against each other, don't blame this Empyrean for not caring about my reputation. His Highness the Crown Prince died in an accident. All of you will follow me into the palace to discuss important matters. Manager Hai and Shintazhen felt bitter. This matter was clearly the Grand Commander's idea, but in the end they had to share the authority. However, this meant that the Grand Commander also acknowledged Leng Shiqi's strength, and he was qualified to have the authority to supervise 6 prefectures. Leng Shiqi secretly smiled. He had come on this trip with such a strong performance. He had originally planned to fish for some benefits, but now he had obtained 2 prefectures, which exceeded his expectations. Thus, the 3 of them cupped their fists together and said, "This lowly one obeys." Soon, the 3 of them followed Emperor Black Flame to the palace's main hall. At this time, the highest level of the Thunderflame dynasty was basically all here. In this group of people, some were happy while others were sad. Many of them had flattered Lei Haoge for a long time and had done many ridiculous things for him. They had originally planned to please the future emperor, which was of course a happy occasion. However, who knew that Lei Haoge would suddenly die before ascending the throne? There were also some people who had long disliked Lei Haoge. They might have been eliminated by Lei Haoge in the future. Now that Lei Haoge was dead, everything was better. When everyone had arrived, the humble prince first asked Emperor Black Flame, "I heard that the previous 4 managers, Li Jueqing, died very strangely?" No one knew why the humble prince suddenly cared about Li Jueqing, who had died a year ago. Emperor Black Flame also said thoughtfully, "That's right. With Li Jueqing's strength, it's impossible for him to die in the hands of someone in the unity of heaven and man realm so easily. At that time, I captured a trace of the power of the earth at the scene, so it's possible that it was done by someone in the heavenly origin realm who cultivated the earth element technique. And it's at the peak of the heavenly origin realm. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any clues later, so we could only leave it as it is." However, the humble prince showed an expression that said, "What I'm going to say next must not be leaked. I speculate that the person who killed Li Jueqing and the crown prince may be the same person. That person must be someone in the metaphysic realm." Chapter 726. When the 3 words Tongxian realm fell into the ears of the crowd, it was no doubt as shocking as a sudden clap of thunder. It was the same for those civil officials in the hall who didn't have much cultivation base. They were all in high positions and they knew some secrets that ordinary people didn't know. The sky origin realm was not the end of cultivation. There was an even higher realm that controlled the laws of heaven and earth, known as the heaven and earth profound realm. It was also known as the Tongxian realm. There were very few sky origin stage cultivators in the world. One sky origin stage cultivator was enough to support a top-tier sect. There were only about 50 top sects in the world, and the difference between the top sects was huge. The Thousand Illusion Sword sect was at the bottom, with only the Thousand Illusion Sword sovereigns supporting it. The Mountain Sea sect had 2 or 3 sky origin realm experts, which was the norm. The Blood Robe Pavilion, Imperial Beast House, and Blood Beast sect all had several sky origin realm experts and were considered to be at the front. The top sects were at the top 5 sections. For example, the 10,000 Laws Mysterious sect had 9 sky origin realm experts. The Yin and Yang halls, the 3 great empires, and the 4 Saint Spirit realms were all transcendent powers with more than 10 sky origin realm experts. The Thunderfire dynasty was a colossus, and their sky origin realm experts were mainly concentrated in the Imperial Consecration Hall and the military. They had more than 30 sky origin realm experts, which was terrifying. Including the sects ranked on the world sect ranking and the lone cultivators, there were only a few hundred heavenly origin stage cultivators on the entire Falling Star continent. The reason why the Thunderfire dynasty was called a transcendent power was not only because they had sky origin realm experts, but also because they had Tongxian experts. The Tongxian realm was almost unknown to ordinary people. More than 70% of the cultivators in the world did not even know about this realm. This was because this realm was too far away, and those who had this level of cultivation could be counted with one's fingers. There were only 7 known Tongxian realm experts in the world. They were from the 3 great empires and the 4 Saint Spirit realms respectively. As for the Yin and Yang halls, they were too mysterious. No one knew how many Tongxian realm experts they had. Thus, when the Shadi prince mentioned that a Tongxian realm expert might have come to the capital and killed the 4 great chief stewards and the crown prince, the shock was too great. When Leng Shiqi heard this, a look of shock appeared on his face, but he was laughing in his heart. Someone actually mistook him for a Tongxian realm expert. This way, no matter how they investigated, it would be impossible for them to trace it back to him. In fact, in terms of the laws of heaven and earth, Leng Shiqi did indeed have the qualifications to reach the Tongxin realm. It could also be said that he had already paved the path to the Tongxin realm for himself. As long as he didn't die prematurely, it was almost certain that he would break through to the Sky Origin stage. It was even possible for him to reach the Sky Origin stage. While everyone was still immersed in shock, Heavenly Venerable Black Flames was puzzled. There is indeed such a possibility, but why would that mysterious mystic comprehending realm cultivator want to kill Li Jueqing and His Highness the Crown Prince? When he killed Li Jueqing, the Crown Prince was not yet the Crown Prince. Could it be that Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince have something in common? He immediately hit the nail on the head. It was impossible to kill someone for no reason. There must be a reason. If Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince were both killed by the same person, it meant that the two of them had something in common. For example, having a common enemy. Those who could stand in the main hall were all smart people. They quickly thought of this point. Leng Shiqi did not panic. He was indeed worried about the Crown Prince and Li Jueqing, but he believed that others would not suspect him. First of all, Li Jueqing had dealt with Leng Shiqi secretly. No one knew about it except for Leng Shiqi and the Li clan. Now that the Li clan had been destroyed, Li Juge and the Li clan's fourth uncle, who knew the truth, were also dead. Therefore, no one knew about the grudge between Leng Shiqi and the Li clan. At most, it could only be said that Eunuch Gao and Li Jueqing had a grudge. As Eunuch Gao's disciple, Leng Shiqi naturally stood on the opposite side. This point alone was not worthy of suspicion. If anyone wanted to suspect, they had to suspect Eunuch Gao. As for the grudge between the Crown Prince and Leng Shiqi, it was actually not that big. Although He Dai and a few others knew about it, the Crown Prince had offended many people and formed many grudges. One more Leng Shiqi would not make a difference. Of course, Leng Shiqi was also someone who had a grudge against both Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince. Perhaps he would be suspected, but that grudge was far from enough to kill. Moreover, in the eyes of outsiders, Leng Shiqi did not have the qualifications to kill Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince. Unfortunately, they were all wrong. Leng Shiqi not only dared to kill but also had the strength to kill them. Everyone was deep in thought, speculating about who the murderer was and whether or not he was hiding nearby. Little did they know that the real murderer was standing right next to them. Leng Shiqi looked at everyone with the intention of watching a good show. During this time, Heavenly Master He Yen did glance at Leng Shiqi, but he quickly looked away. After a while he said, "Now that Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince are dead, they might have angered someone in private, but we don't know." "You're right." The humble prince had not appeared for many years and did not know about the grudge between them. He agreed with Heavenly Master He Yan's opinion. "I've already gone to see old Master Qiao. He has already left the mountain. As long as that mysterious metaphysical realm cultivator appears again, he will definitely be discovered. By then, no matter how strong he is, we must let him know the strength of the Thunderflame dynasty." At the end of his speech, the humble prince exuded a fierce and domineering aura. The might of a king was fully displayed. Leng Shiqi decided not to use the power of law so easily near the imperial capital in the future. If he was caught by that old Master Qiao, he would definitely die. The dignity of the Thunderflame dynasty cannot be touched. Prime Minister Mo Linhui said, "However, I'm worried about something. The Crown Prince was supposed to ascend the throne next month, but he died in an accident. I'm very heartbroken. However, the country can't be without a ruler. The throne of the Thunderflame dynasty has been empty for almost a year. We should appoint another Crown Prince as soon as possible to reassure the people. I summoned you here to discuss this matter." The humble prince also felt a headache when the Crown Prince was mentioned. The late Emperor Lei Qingjun had long deprived Lei Haoyin and the other princes of the right to compete for the position of Crown Prince. Before he died, he could only give the position of Crown Prince to Lei Haoge, who was a general among dwarves. However, Lei Haoge had died. In this way, there seemed to be no suitable candidate among the remaining princes. King Hui and King An were definitely not suitable. Lei Haoyin and Lei Haoran were not suitable either. Otherwise, they would be violating the late emperor's decree. What should they do? "Do you have any candidates to recommend?" the humble prince asked. The civil and military officials in the imperial court whispered to each other, but after a long time, no one stood out to say anything. Chapter 727. The humble prince sighed. It was quite funny that the Thunderblaze dynasty couldn't even find a successor for the throne. In fact, the Thunderblaze dynasty was so powerful that the person sitting on the throne didn't have to be smart or hardworking. As long as the person didn't waste money and was an honest emperor, the Thunderblaze dynasty didn't need the emperor to do anything. However, people like King Yin and King Hui weren't worthy of the throne. The best of them were directly excluded from the list of candidates by the late Emperor Lei Qingjun. Therefore it was very awkward. The humble prince regretted agreeing to let Lei Qingjun go crazy. Otherwise he wouldn't have to do anything. He could continue to cultivate in seclusion and explore the metaphysical realm. That was what he really wanted. Otherwise he could have sat on the throne decades ago. Now, the humble prince only wanted to find someone who could sit on the throne peacefully and not cause any trouble. Just when he was having a headache, he and Heavenly Master He Yen suddenly stared at each other. They were both ethereal realm cultivators. One was the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, and the other was a prince who didn't care about the throne at all. However, the two of them had such expressions on their faces. It was obvious that something big had happened. Everyone felt that something was wrong. Some of them secretly wondered if the mysterious metaphysical realm cultivator had made his move again. The cultivators in the basilica looked outside the basilica at the same time. Their eyes were filled with shock, including Leng Shiqi. They could clearly feel that there were more than 30 bursts of powerful spiritual energy outside the basilica like a volcanic eruption. Even the atmospheric energy was being stirred up. Leng Shiqi and the others rushed out of the basilica. They saw more than 30 figures standing in the air and looking down at them. They were all ethereal realm cultivators. Everyone secretly gasped. Since when did ethereal realm cultivators become so common? What kind of force could have so many ethereal realm cultivators? What were they trying to do by breaking into the palace? The humble prince looked at those people with a sullen face. He couldn't figure out how so many Sky Origin Stage cultivators could get into the royal capital without being noticed by the array. He only knew that if those people attacked together, the entire royal capital would be in ruins by now. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame recognized them one by one. Elder Bu from the wonderful 10,000 Laws sect, the High Priest of the Wizard Tribe, the Sect Master of the Purgatory Demon Sect, the Sect Master of the Divine Dueling Mountain, the Vice Pavilion Master of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the Palace Master of the Sky Expanse Palace, the Supreme Elder of the Ultimate Saber Hall, the Sect Master of the Evil Heart Sword Sect, the Mountain Sea Sect's Pavilion Master Huang, the Alliance Master of the Five Flags Alliance. Every time he said a name, the hearts of the others would beat violently. These people were the leaders of the top sects on the world sect ranking. They were also the strongest. Each of them would cause a commotion if they appeared alone. But now all of them had appeared at the same time. This kind of status and strength gave people a pressure that was difficult to describe with words. Even many masters of Gang Spirit Realm found it hard to breathe and blacked out. They couldn't believe what they had seen. Leng Shiqi also found it hard to believe. Those ethereal realm cultivators were all powerful figures. He had seen some of them and was familiar with some of them. Elder Bu of Wonderful Sect had been here at Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. At that time he was watched by 8 masters of the Imperial Hall of Worship. He must have been furious. Head Huang of Mountain Sea Sect had shown up when the Phantom Spirit's secret land was opened. He even used his own power to maintain the entrance of the secret land. As for Ink Frost Ghost, the deputy head of the Blood-Robed Pavilion, he was even more so. At this time, Ink Frost Ghost secretly transmitted a message to Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi, seize this opportunity. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed. What does Ink Frost Ghost mean? Then the masters of the Imperial Hall of Worship finally arrived. When they saw so many ethereal realm cultivators, they were also shocked. These experts from the Imperial Consecration Hall were used to being high and mighty. But now they were facing 2 times their number of experts. Among them were the sect leader and Grand Elder. Even the Imperial Consecration Hall couldn't withstand it. The humble prince looked at Elder Bu who was standing in the front. What do you want to do by breaking into the palace? Elder Bu snorted. What do we want to do? Lei Qingjue, you really know how to play dumb. 1 year ago you were really awe-inspiring when you destroyed dozens of sections. But do you know that the imperial capital of the Thunderblaze dynasty can disappear from the world at any time? Leng Shiqi looked at the ethereal realm cultivators in the sky and finally understood. These masters came from various top sections. 90% of the top sects in the Thunderblaze dynasty were here. The only reason they came here was to deter. It could also be said that they came from the Spirit Cultivation sect's counterattack. 1 year ago, Lei Qingjue destroyed 3 top sects and dozens of first-rate sects in a fit of anger, shocking the world. Originally, everyone thought that the spirit cultivator sects in the Thunderfire dynasty would be afraid of being beaten and would be well-behaved. But they miscalculated. Now, all the top sects in the Thunderblaze dynasty, except for the Jadefall Island near the Eastern Sea, had secretly joined forces to break into the palace. One had to know that these top sects didn't get along well with each other. Yet, they could disregard their former enmity and directly break into the palace. It could be seen that the Thunderblaze dynasty had forced them into a corner. Looks like you all came with ill intentions. The humble prince's tone also turned cold. Elder Bu was even more unyielding. So what if they come with ill intentions? I really want to know what the Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty will do when all the experts of the Imperial Consecration Hall of the Thunderflame dynasty and all the courtiers and generals in the Imperial capital are dead. Hearing this, the humble prince's face turned gloomy. The officials below were even more shocked. If they all died, the Thunderblaze dynasty would definitely fall into an unprecedented state of weakness. The Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. At that time they would definitely mobilize their troops to attack. The few Heaven Origin Realm experts at the border would definitely not be able to defend against the joint attack of the two dynasties. The Thunderblaze dynasty was in danger. No one would have thought that the spirit cultivation sects would be such a threat to the Thunderblaze dynasty. How did you all come in? The humble prince shouted angrily, almost losing his composure. The Thunderblaze dynasty had naturally been on guard against these Heaven Origin Realm experts. Otherwise, it would be terrible if they came to cause trouble for no reason. Therefore, there were a large number of high-grade formations near the Imperial capital. As long as an expert above the Heaven Origin Realm approached, they would be discovered. But where did they come from? At this moment, the void suddenly shattered into a pitch-black hole. An old man with white hair and a youthful face walked out. With the Sky Amplification Palace Lord here, those formations are nothing. The humble prince immediately felt confident when he saw this old man. He immediately greeted respectfully, "Old Man Xiao." This old man was the Thunderblaze dynasty's mystic comprehending realm expert. Once he appeared, the Imperial Consecration Hall and the civil and military officials finally heaved a sigh of relief. With Old Man Xiao here there would definitely be no problem. Many people also looked at the Sky Amplification Palace Lord. The Sky Amplification Palace was also one of the top 7 sects in the world. It was known for its formations. With him taking action, it was indeed possible to pass through the Thunderblaze dynasty's formations and directly enter the Imperial capital. However, in the next moment, 6 different colored spirit lights suddenly flashed in the sky. The terrifying throbbing caused the Heaven Origin Realm experts' expressions to change. A middle-aged man in a purple robe walked out of the spirit lights with an ancient aura. It was as if he had transmigrated from the ancient times. He smiled and said, "Old Man Xiao, long time no see. You're still alive." Old Master Xiao frowned and said, "6 directions spiritual supremacy." Chapter 728. The 6 direction spirit realm was one of the 4 saint spirit realms, and this 6 direction spirit sovereign was the current ruler of the spirit realm. He was also a Tongshan realm expert. Old Man Xiao and the shoddy prince's heart sank. These spirit cultivator sects had even invited a 6 direction spirit sovereign. From the current battle strength, the Thunderfire dynasty was actually at an absolute disadvantage. It could be seen that they were extremely resentful towards the Thunderfire dynasty, and the shoddy prince also knew that it was impossible for them to be kind today. His eyes turned golden, and the origin energy around him shook. You can even invite the reclusive 6 direction spirit sovereign out of seclusion. You guys are quite capable, but don't even think about threatening my Thunderfire dynasty. 6 direction spirit sovereign said, "Even now you're still so strong. This is also your Thunderfire dynasty's usual attitude towards spirit cultivator sections. You can't blame others for today's disaster." Leng Shiqi's eyes moved slightly. This matter was actually predicted by Lei Haoyan a year ago. The spirit cultivator sects would retaliate against the Thunderfire dynasty sooner or later, but no one expected it to come so early, and the timing was also very good. It was when the Thunderfire dynasty's throne was empty and power was scattered. Other than that, Crown Prince Lei Haoge was also assassinated by Leng Shiqi. So, let alone the throne, there was not even a crown prince. If today's battle really turned into a river of blood, the Thunderfire dynasty would not gather their strength to fight against the enemy. Instead, there would be internal strife for the throne first. No one wanted to see such a situation. If Lung Shichi could think of this, so could the Shoddy Prince and the others. But the Shoddy Prince was still so strong. From this, it seemed that the Thunderfire dynasty had indeed formed a strong stance against spirit cultivator sections. This was already imprinted in their bones. The only one who could see it clearly, Lei Haoran, was stripped of his status as a prince and imprisoned for life. At this time, the palace lord of the Yen Palace said, Lei Qingjue, the Heavenly Thunderfire Annihilation Formation of the Imperial Capital is a supreme-level formation. Unfortunately, the formation core, the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, has been sealed by your own people. I'm afraid that the spiritual energy inside will leak out. Now it will take time to remove the seal. This little bit of time is enough to make you die without a burial ground. Then he suddenly shouted, Formation. Immediately after, dozens of Sky Origin Stage cultivators formed a complicated formation with 6-direction spiritual sovereign as the center. In an instant, the weather changed and the entire imperial city darkened. Specks of light intertwined to form a cage, completely trapping the imperial palace. Just the thought of using a Tongshan realm expert as the core of the formation and numerous Heaven's Origin realm experts as the formation flags was terrifying. Old Man Xiao immediately pointed at the void. Immediately the space cracked and cracks spread out. However, 6-direction spirit sovereign waved his hand, and the golden light from his primordial spirit soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, all the spatial cracks had been smoothed out. Old Man Xiao, I heard that you managed to enter the mystic comprehending realm by comprehending a sliver of the law of space with the help of an external object. However, the law of space was easily erased by me. Looks like the rumors are true, 6-direction spiritual sovereign mocked. Old Master Qiao was expressionless and did not reply. He had already lost to 6-direction spiritual supremacy in a probing exchange of blows just now. If they were to really fight, he would not have any advantage either. This way, the 30 or so Heavenly Yuan stage cultivators from the Spirit Cultivator sect would be able to unleash their anger without restraint. The Imperial City would definitely be destroyed. Old Master Qiao hurriedly transmitted his voice to the Shoddy Prince. Let's listen to their conditions and stall for time. Quickly send someone to bring the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and activate the Heavenly Thunderfire Annihilation Formation. The Shoddy Prince understood. He raised his head and looked at 6-direction spiritual sovereign. Fighting to the death with the Thunderfire dynasty will not benefit you at all. Even if the dynasty declines or even perishes before that happens, we will drag you down with us. Today this king admits defeat. Tell me your conditions. The moment these words were spoken, many of the ministers below were unwilling. If the Thunderfire dynasty gave in this time, there might be a next time. Furthermore, the Thunderfire dynasty could no longer suppress those spirit cultivator sects like they were doing now. However, they were suppressed by the aura of the Heavenly Yuan stage cultivators to the point that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. No one dared to say a word. 6-direction spiritual sovereign and the rest laughed lightly. If you had said so earlier, there would have been no need to make things so tense. We only have one condition. Disband the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards, and we will retreat immediately. Impossible. The Shoddy Prince rejected immediately. The Discipline Commission intimidated all the Spirit Cultivator sects, and the Dark Lightning Guards were the strongest intelligence network of the Thunderfire dynasty. They were equivalent to the right-hand men of the Thunderfire dynasty. Disbanding the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards was no different from cutting off one's own arms. Lei Qingjue, this sovereign is not discussing with you. 6-direction spiritual sovereign shook his head and said, if you agree we will retreat. If not, we will massacre the imperial capital. Suddenly, a coiling dragon spear appeared in the Shoddy Prince's hand. This was one of the rare level 8 earth weapons of the Thunderfire dynasty, the Imperial Might Coiling Dragon Spear. Then let's try it. Elder Bu of the mysterious 10,000 Laws sect took out his spiritual sword and pointed it at the Shoddy Prince. Last time you stopped me. Let me see how powerful the Thunderfire dynasty's inherited cultivation technique is. The Imperial Might Coiling Dragon Spear in the Shoddy Prince's hand roared furiously. Instantly the sky was dyed golden. Waves of power that looked down on the world descended, and a corner of the array that was set up in midair was torn apart by him. Elder Bu was surrounded by an illusory light. He pointed his spiritual sword, and the colored glaze illusion turned into a dreamland. At the same time, layers of arrays that were thousands of feet long flashed behind him. The origin energy of heaven and earth vibrated and turned into a 9 heavenly lotus. As the two Heaven Origin Realm experts fought, Heavenly Master He Yen immediately set up a thick layer of black flames to protect everyone. Lung Shiqi observed the battle carefully. Judging from the movements, the Shoddy Prince and Elder Bu's cultivation was definitely stronger than the old man and Lin Yuanliang's. They were not just borrowing the origin energy of heaven and earth. They were also infusing their own understanding of the heavenly Tao. The Shoddy Prince shook his spear and a dragon roared. A golden dragon jumped out. At the same time, a god of war holding a spear that was thousands of feet tall appeared behind him. This was his cosmic form. Once a Heaven Origin Realm expert used his cosmic form, it meant that he had used all his strength. As the spear stabbed out, the void trembled. Along with a huge wave, the nine-colored lotus was shattered. At the same time, the shadow of a giant bear appeared between heaven and earth. Sun Tiangan, the chief commander of the patrol guards, also made his move. Monarch Cloud Shuttle, the chief commander of the Discipline Commission, opened his mouth slightly. A strange fog instantly covered the entire palace. Even the senses of the Heaven Origin Realm experts were suppressed by it. The rest of the experts from the Imperial Hall of Worship and the Spirit Cultivator sects also made their moves. One cosmic form after another appeared in the palace, and the origin energy of heaven and earth within hundreds of miles became violent. There was only one person who was an exception. He was the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Blood Robe Pavilion, Black Frost Ghost. He hid his body directly. No one present could find him, including Old Man Xiao and Six Directions Spirit Elder. The power displayed in front of them was strong, but the Heaven Origin Realm assassin hiding in the dark was even more terrifying. This made the experts from the Imperial Hall of Worship feel even more pressure. This was the terrifying part of the Blood Robe Pavilion. At the same time, the weather in the Imperial capital was completely chaotic. Thunder, wind, and earthquake happened one after another. It was like the end of the world, and it made people tremble in fear. Especially when no one knew what was going on. This kind of unknown terror made people panic. Of course, the most chaotic place was inside the palace. There were dozens of Heaven Origin Realm experts confronting each other. It was a shocking scene, especially Old Man Xiao and Six Directions Spirit Elder. With them as the center, the space around them was constantly shattering. No one dared to get close to them. A shocking battle was about to happen. Chapter 729. The number of Heavenly Origin Realm cultivators on the Thunderfire Dynasty's side was much lesser than the Spirit Cultivator sects. Furthermore, the Heavenly Origin Realm cultivators could not be determined by numbers alone. Regardless of the realm, there was a difference in strength. The Thunderfire Dynasty's Imperial Hall of Worship sounded grand, but most of the people inside were recruited by the Thunderfire Dynasty. Some of them were rogue cultivators, some had enmity with the Starfall Dynasty and Northern Wei Dynasty, and some were nurtured by the Thunderfire Dynasty themselves. For example, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, Monarch Cloud Shuttle, and the others were like that. When they left their positions as Dark Thunder Guards and Discipline Division's Great Commander, they would also enter the Imperial Hall of Worship. Therefore, the strength of the experts in the Imperial Hall of Worship was uneven. On the Spirit Cultivator sect side, they were either sect masters, or Grand Elders. They enjoyed the highest status and resources of the top sects, so their strength definitely surpassed the Imperial Hall of Worship. In fact, the few Heavenly Origin Realm cultivators on the Thunderfire Dynasty's side already had thoughts of escaping. The reason why they were still here was because they were waiting for the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation. As long as the formation was activated, they would have a chance of winning. The Shoddy Prince shouted sternly, "Even if you are very strong, you should be careful of losing a few teeth if you want to swallow us. All of you are the leaders of your sections. Once you die, what will happen to your sects? Maybe the people standing beside you will swallow your sections." Six Directions Spirit Sovereign said coldly, "Lei Qingjue, don't try to sow discord. I know you are stalling for time. I will ask you one last time. Do you agree or not?" The Shoddy Prince fell silent. His expression was extremely stiff. As a Heavenly Origin Realm cultivator, he felt so uncomfortable because Six Directions Spirit Sovereign and the others gave him too much pressure. Strictly speaking, his decision today would even affect the rise and fall of the Thunderfire Dynasty. Lung Shiqi was also guessing what decision the Shoddy Prince would make. Regardless of whether he agreed or not, it would be an extremely heavy blow to the Thunderfire Dynasty. At the same time, Lung Shiqi could not help but curse inwardly. The Thunderfire dynasty actually did something stupid like sealing the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. They clearly knew that the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was the formation core of the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing Formation. Wasn't the formation used to prevent accidents from happening? But now, the Thunderblaze dynasty had fallen into such a huge disadvantage because they had not been able to activate the formation immediately. However, the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was sealed because the Thunderfire dynasty's imperial family was afraid of the Thunderfire Pearl's power leaking. The Heavenly Origin Realm, the Pearl, and the Heavenly Pearl, they had never stopped developing Heavenly Origin Pearl's Pearl. And the Heavenly Origin Realm Pearl. In addition, the imperial family had also made a guarantee that if an outsider obtained the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, they would not be able to use it. It was killing two birds with one stone. However, they did not expect that it was precisely because Lei Qingjun had allowed the Thunderfire Heavenly Bead to appear in Void Scar Sky that the people from the Spirit Cultivator sects had seen through it. This was also one of the reasons why so many experts had abandoned their previous enmity to find trouble with the Thunderfire dynasty. The fact that the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation could not be activated directly was a huge flaw, which almost forced Prince Zhuozhen into a desperate situation. In Leng Shiqi's view, today's matter could not possibly be settled peacefully. If the humble prince did not agree, there would be a great battle. Even cultivators at the Sky Origin stage would die, not to mention cultivators at the Oneness of Heaven and Men stage or lower. If the Emperor agreed, the Dark Thunder Guards and the Masters of the Discipline Department would have to give up their lives. Otherwise, the Spirit Cultivator sect would not listen to the Emperor's words. Leng Shiqi guessed that the Emperor would agree first and delay further. However, this would be even more dangerous for Leng Shiqi. If the lives of the Dark Thunder Guards and the experts of the Discipline Commission were exchanged for the activation of the Heaven-Slaying Thunderfire Array, it was absolutely worth it. Leng Shiqi saw that the situation was not good and quietly retreated to the back of the crowd. As long as there was a situation that was disadvantageous to him, he had to escape first even if he had to expose his strength. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Leng Shiqi, Lei Qingzhuo will definitely agree first. Later, Six Direction Spiritual Elder will attack the higher-ups of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. That will be the time for you to make a great contribution. The owner of this voice was the Ink Frost Ghostly Man. Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He had already understood Ink Frost Ghostman's intention, and he nodded subtly. However, he did not put his life on the Ink Frost Ghostly Man. He quietly opened the system store interface and bought a mysterious item. Sure enough, just as Leng Shiqi and the Ink Frost Ghostly Man expected, the Emperor's face darkened and he said stiffly, "I agree to your conditions. Disband the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards." Words are not proof. Six Direction Spiritual Elder naturally would not believe the Emperor so easily. Hand over the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guard's Great Commander, the 4 punishment envoys, the 4 chiefs, and the higher-ups. As for the distribution of the various states and counties, I will deal with it myself later. The Emperor turned to look at Black Flame Heavenly Lord and Cloud Shuttle Sovereign. Their expressions also turned serious. Six Direction Spiritual Elder's intention was very clear. He wanted their lives. Of course, they were not willing to give up their lives. No matter how loyal they were to the Thunderflame dynasty, their lives were still their own. As Sky Origin Realm cultivators, they could hold great power anywhere in the world. There was no need for them to die for the Thunderflame dynasty. The Emperor's lips moved slightly. He was communicating with Black Flame Heavenly Lord and Cloud Shuttle Sovereign through telepathy. Six Direction Spiritual Elder was getting impatient. He suddenly snapped his fingers. A bright green light suddenly appeared. The void froze and everything was destroyed. In the Imperial Hall of Worship, several Sky Origin Realm cultivators were hit by a heavy blow. Their blood splattered everywhere. Master Qiao was a little slower. It was too late for him to make a move. It was obvious that Six Direction Spiritual Elder was indeed more powerful than Master Qiao. With just a snap of his fingers, Six Direction Spiritual Elder was able to severely injure several Sky Origin Realm cultivators. If a fight really broke out, how many people would be left in the Imperial Hall of Worship? The Emperor made up his mind. Just as he was about to hand over a few people to buy some time, a man walked out from the crowd. It was Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi flew into the sky with 4 wings on his back. He laughed wildly, "Haha, Sky Origin Realm cultivators and Tongshan Realm cultivators. How impressive. I am Lu Xingji, one of the 4 great managers of the Dark Thunder Guards. If you want my life, then come and take it. But even if I die, I will tear off a layer of your skin. Boom. Immediately after, Lung Shiqi transformed into wild demon blood beast body and indestructible Vajra divine art. He held the 1,000 illusion sword in front of his chest, as if he was facing death calmly. His actions instantly shocked everyone. This wasn't because of his strength but because of his courage. At a time like this, there was still someone who dared to stand up for the Thunderflame dynasty against dozens of Sky Origin Realm cultivators. Among them, there was even a Tongshen Realm cultivator, 6th Direction spiritual elder, who could destroy the world. Furthermore, Lung Shiqi's cultivation was only at the unity of heaven and man realm. This kind of cultivation was simply too weak in front of those cultivators. But he still stood up. Just this courage alone made the experts of the Imperial Hall of Worship feel ashamed of their inferiority. It also made many people from the spirit cultivator sects sigh that there were still talents in the Thunderflame dynasty. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, Monarch Cloud Shuttle, the Emperor of Humble Governance, and Old Man Xiao all looked at Lung Shiqi with complicated expressions. The Emperor of Humble Governance clapped his hands and said, "Good, good, good. What a loyal and courageous man. As expected of an important official of the Thunderflame dynasty, as expected of one of the 4 great managers personally appointed by the late Emperor. How can I hand over such a person? Even if we fight to the death today, my Thunderflame dynasty will accompany you to the end." Chapter 730. Lung Shiqi's actions were inconceivable to some people, but it also ignited the blood of a portion of the Thunderblaze dynasty's people, igniting their endless fighting spirit. Even 6th Direction spiritual sovereign could not help but take a second look at Lung Shiqi. In his eyes, Lung Shiqi was as weak as an ant, but his fearless courage moved 6th Direction spiritual sovereign. Being fearless is a good thing, but unfortunately, you did not recognize your own strength and the situation you are in. If you were a disciple of my 6th Direction spiritual region, I would definitely nurture you well. What a pity, 6th Direction spiritual sovereign said regretfully. Then he stretched out a finger and a mysterious divine energy gathered. He was going to kill Lung Shiqi with his own hands. It was a great honor to have this Tongshen realm expert, the region lord of 6th Direction spiritual region, personally kill someone in the unity of heaven and man realm. Fight! The humble prince suddenly shouted. He raised his dragon spear, and a divine dragon descended, wanting to save Lung Shiqi. Old Man Xiao was also about to make a move, but at that moment, a thick brilliance suddenly filled the sky above the 9 heavens. Waves of strange energy spread out, and all the Heaven Origin Realm experts who were hovering in midair immediately felt the origin energy of heaven and earth sink. Then they fell to the ground one by one. The dozens of Heaven Origin Realm experts from the Imperial Family's Hall of Worship and the Spirit Cultivator sect looked up at the sky at the same time, their eyes flashing with astonishment. The only thing that could stir up the origin energy of heaven and earth and force everyone to fall was the power of law, which was above the origin energy of heaven and earth. At that moment they felt waves of gravity pressing down on them. The gravity was not very strong, but they could not even think about flying. Only a Tongshen realm expert could have this kind of power. In the Imperial City, other than Old Man Xiao and 6th Direction spiritual sovereign, there was a third Tongshen realm expert. 6th Direction spiritual sovereign immediately stopped. He and Old Man Xiao frowned deeply. They did not notice that there was another Tongshen realm expert nearby. This mysterious Tongshen realm expert had suppressed dozens of Heaven Origin realm experts before he even appeared. The power he displayed was too shocking. They did not know what this mysterious expert's intention was, and which side would he stand on. If he stood on the side of the Thunderflame dynasty, today's disaster would be resolved. One more Tongshen realm cultivator was too much of a threat to the Sky Origin realm. It could be said that it was a dimensional attack. There was no suspense, so the Spirit Cultivator sect had no chance of winning. If this Tongshen realm cultivator stood on the side of the Spirit Cultivator sect, even if the Thunderflame dynasty activated the Thunderflame Heaven Punishing Array, it would be useless. That was what the humble prince was most worried about. Not long ago they had speculated that the person who killed Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge was a powerhouse at the metaphysic-reaching realm who had cultivated the law of gravity. Now there was indeed such a person. From the looks of it, that mysterious expert had a grudge with the Thunderflame dynasty. The shoddy prince's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. As the saying goes, when it rains, it pours. The Thunderfire dynasty was already exhausted from dealing with the counterattack of the Spirit Cultivator sect. On top of that, there was also a Tongshan realm expert who was coincidentally targeting them. The Thunderblaze dynasty was truly unlucky to have both sides working together. The shoddy prince was already considering whether to use the Thunderblaze dynasty's final trump card. As long as they used that trump card, they still had a chance of winning. However, once they used it, the Thunderblaze dynasty's thousands of years of accumulation would be used up by more than half. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign also wanted to know the purpose of this mysterious expert. He raised his head and said, "I don't know when this Tongshan realm expert who cultivates the law of gravity appeared. Why don't you show yourself? Perhaps we have the same purpose today. Perhaps we can work together." "Not really." A heavy voice rang out from above the clouds. "The Thunderblaze dynasty's fate is not over yet. Your actions will not have any results. If you stop now, you will be less affected by karma." When this sentence was said, the people below had different reactions. The Spirit Cultivator sect instantly felt that something was wrong. From what they heard, this mysterious Tongshan realm expert seemed to want to help the Thunderblaze dynasty. If that was the case, they would miss the chance to join forces and force the Thunderblaze dynasty to submit. The shoddy prince and the others were like drowning people who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. However, they were also very confused. This mysterious expert had killed Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge, so he definitely had a grudge against the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, why was he standing on the Thunderblaze dynasty's side now? This was a really messy account. However, the shoddy prince would naturally not let go of such a good opportunity. He hurriedly said, "Senior, if you help the Thunderblaze dynasty tide over this crisis today, you will definitely repay me generously in the future." Old Master Qiao also said, "As long as you delay them a little, when the Thunderblaze Heaven Punishing formation is activated, these people will not be a threat." This time, it was the Six Directions Spirit Sovereign and the others' turn to be gloomy. They had already wasted a lot of time, and the Thunderblaze Heaven Punishing formation could be activated at any time. Once the formation was activated, even without the help of the mysterious expert, the Thunderblaze dynasty would be in an invincible position. At most, they could destroy the imperial capital. However, they could not damage the Thunderblaze dynasty's vitality. Perhaps some of them would be killed here. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign knew that the situation had completely reversed. They had become the anxious party, and with every passing moment, their lives would be in danger. He was unwilling to accept this. "Who exactly are you? Why are you helping the evildoers?" However, the mysterious expert only replied with one word, "Karma." "Karma? What bullsh** T karma?" Six Directions Spirit Sovereign suddenly shouted angrily without caring about his image. The four saint spiritual regions have been stagnant for tens of thousands of years because of the rumored karma. However, I do not believe in karma, nor do I believe in fate. I will lead the Six Directions spiritual region to break all karma. Everything in the world is predestined. Some things can't be forced. Let's stop. The arrow has already been knocked on the bow. Anyway, we have already come this far. I'm also very interested in your strength. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign's body flashed with flowing light, causing the Heaven Origin Stage cultivators to not dare to look directly at him. His battle intent reached the 9 heavens. Who else but him? The mysterious expert only said one word again, "It's too late." Not good. The Sky Amplification Palace Master's expression changed. There is a terrifying force under the palace that is about to erupt. The Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation is about to be activated. Old Man Xiao flipped his hand, and a series of explosions could be heard in the air. Spatial cracks as thick as an arm actually severed the formation that the Heaven Origin Stage cultivators had set up. The Sky Amplification Palace Master shouted, "Spirit Sovereign, the situation is over. Let's take advantage of the fact that the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation has not been fully activated and leave quickly." Six Directions Spirit Sovereign hesitated. If not for the mysterious Tongshan Stage cultivator appearing out of nowhere, he would have already killed all the higher-ups of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. After that, he would cause the various powers to completely uproot their branches in every county. This way his reputation would reach the peak. At that time he would only need to wave his arm and all the spirit cultivator sects in the world would definitely submit to him. He would be able to easily lead the various large sects and become a superpower that could surpass the Thunderfire dynasty. This was his true plan. However, all of this would be in the hands of this mysterious expert. He was filled with hatred and anger, but he also knew his own situation. If he did not retreat now, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. Instead, the reputation of the Six Direction spiritual region would fall to the freezing point, and he would no longer have a chance. A sharp killing intent flashed across Six Direction Spirit Sovereign's eyes. I don't care who you are. Since you keep talking about karma, then your appearance has also infected yourself with my karma. The next time we meet, you will die and I will die. Finally, he looked at the shoddy prince. The Thunderfire dynasty has good fortune, but this is only the beginning. Let's go. Shortly after, Six Direction Spirit Sovereign waved his hand, and layers of divine light broke through the gravitational space. The 30-odd heaven origin stage cultivators that the spirit cultivator sects had joined together turned into streams of light and flew away. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.